those years as a superhero in Marvel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 726. The most frightening thing in life is getting the wrong script. 12 elite mechanical soldiers, 20 excellent elite mercenaries, and a hunter named Kraven who is famous in the world's underground mercenary market. This is the task force to capture X-23. From various perspectives, X-23, that is, Laura, is not a particularly difficult character to deal with. Although she has the regeneration ability cloned from Logan, and has transplanted the same bone claws, and covered with a layer of adamantium on the outside of the bone claws, Laura's other bones have not been replaced with adamantium. In terms of combat power, Laura may be able to deal with a group of ordinary people, or it is not a big problem to fight against ordinary security guards and mercenaries. But that's all. Because when she was in AIM, Laura had not officially started combat training. Although she had some basic training, it was just the basics. Or she fought a few battles with instinct on the way to escape, but that's all. Pierce's men are all specially trained and know very well where the weaknesses of Weapon X are. And there is a more powerful Hunter Kraven. For Donald Pierce, the action of Hunter Kraven should be easy to capture and there will be no mistakes. So now he even has time to use a screwdriver to fine-tune his mechanical arm. By the way, take a look at the news and tweets on Twitter. The Hunter Kraven also felt the same way, so he dispersed his men and asked them to separate in groups of 2, forming an encirclement and slowly surrounding the target. It is not difficult to catch a little wolf. Kraven is not afraid of the little wolf's resistance, because he thinks that this little wolf, whose canine teeth have not yet grown, can't bite him at all. The most important thing is not to let the little wolf run away. This is the most critical thing. After all, it takes a lot of effort to set up an ambush circle to capture the prey after it runs away. In this situation, more than 30 elite mercenaries dispersed, each responsible for a direction, and began to advance and retreat in an orderly and hierarchical manner to set up a tight encirclement, right? In the command vehicle of the Night Watch, Frank said to Damon, "We will start the cleanup from the outermost part. We don't know who the enemy is yet. So we will use non-lethal weapons, such as silent tranquilizer guns." Damon nodded, took a monitor connected to the drone reconnaissance screen, and went to find a suitable ambush position with a multifunctional sniper rifle. Frank also began to operate the 5 reconnaissance drones to start harvesting the Hydra mercenaries from the outermost part of the encirclement. Mike was responsible for controlling the other 30 reconnaissance drones to provide everyone with the entire monitoring screen. As for Logan, well, although he repeatedly stated that he could not alarm anyone, and he was also an excellent assassin in the past, but Lee Ji still forced him to sit on the chair and did not allow him to step out of the command vehicle. "Please, how did you become an assassin back then? Don't you know it yourself?" Exclamation mark. "You still have the nerve to say that you were the #1 assassin on the West Coast back then. I'm afraid that the Assassins League will not recognize you as an assassin. Others will definitely write a letter of introduction for you to transfer to the Berserker profession." Lee Ji thought so. In order to avoid a bloody scene, Wolverine must not be dispatched. He didn't want to have to take a broom and mop to clean the city of Florida. So when Kraven and his men and all the people of Hydra were paying full attention to Laura in the encirclement, the harvest on the periphery began silently. The first to start was the integrated inspection and strike drone controlled by Frank. Because these people were divided into 2 groups, in order to ensure that they would not alert others, Frank always used 2 drones to launch powerful anesthetic nails to subdue a group of people directly. In this way, no one would warn others. Because everyone was responsible for different directions and the distance was relatively far, no one noticed that the 2 people on the outermost periphery had fallen. 5 drones, plus Damon. Frank and Damon's cooperation can accurately eliminate 3 groups of people at once. It's the same for both mechanical soldiers and ordinary people. Because even if they are modified mechanical soldiers, most of the places they have been modified are only the limbs and spine, or a small amount of internal organs. But the brain cannot be modified. First of all, no matter how difficult it is to modify the brain, or whether it can be successful, from the perspective of cost alone, how much benefit can be brought by modifying the brains of some elite soldiers? Therefore, neither AIM nor Hydra will do such a thing. The anesthetic needles used by Damon and Frank are powerful brain hypnotic anesthetic toxins. It makes no difference whether the soldiers are modified or not. Unless these soldiers have the ability to predict danger in advance like Spider-Man Peter Parker, or are kung fu masters who are extremely sensitive to subtle changes in the air like Iron Fist or Shang-Chi, such people can avoid the attack of anesthetic needles in advance. Or like Thor and Li Ji, they have super thick defense, and can withstand the heavy machine gun fire with their physical bodies, and even their skin will not be scratched. Of course, if none of these are available, you can also choose to find a special shield like Captain Rogers, and find someone to add a buff to this shield that attracts 100% of the hatred and firepower of others. In this way, all the firepower attacking you will be transferred to the shield, which is also possible. Of course, if you don't have any of these, then there is nothing you can do if you get hit. Anyway, Damon and Frank didn't hold back at all, and quickly harvested the miscellaneous soldiers outside the Hydra. Craven, who had been acting alone in the dark, didn't notice that his manpower was getting fewer and fewer. Because it was standard procedure to maintain radio silence before the operation began, so as not to disturb the prey with possible noise. All the hunting plans were made before the start. As long as the encirclement closed, and then caught the prey in one go, it would be fine. Craven was shrinking towards the core of the encirclement, and he licked the dagger and enjoyed the pleasure of hunting. Pierce was in the command vehicle and looked at the tweet sent by his Twitter friend Crossbones Bullock, 10 secrets you don't know about mechanical prostheses. The cougar was dozing off, and the master of Taskmaster seemed to be playing poker, but he looked a little absent-minded. Frank and Damon were harvesting the Hydra mercenaries outside the periphery, and Logan was being pressed on the chair by Li Ji and was a little angry. Damon was concentrating on controlling the drone. Li Ji was praying for the Hydra soldiers. He hoped that Damon and Frank would not be injected with too much neurohypnotic toxin in their brains, otherwise they would be in danger of becoming brain dead. In the core of the encirclement, Mindy and Laura were still unaware of this. Mindy took Laura's hand and said, "Let's go and test the guy named Stars and Stripes. This place is already very remote. It seems that the residents have temporarily evacuated and left this area. Don't worry about hurting other people." Laura raised her eyebrows. "What are you going to do?" Mindy smiled evilly. "Of course, use the simplest and most direct method." She raised her little fist. "Pretend to rob. What do you think? Big Daddy will complain about us if he finds out. Have you forgotten the last time you extorted snacks from the White House? You were locked up for a day. And the snacks you got back were also confiscated by the Night Walker," Laura reminded. Mindy waved her hand nonchalantly. "That was in New York. Why did we choose to do it in Florida this time? Because we can escape the eyes of those old guys." The young girl Mindy had a mysterious confidence. So when Colonel Stars and Stripes was playing with his dagger and humming the tune of the quiet flow of the Leiden River, the two girls jumped out from the dark. But before Mindy could speak to test Colonel Stars and Stripes, suddenly, there was a noise in the dark. Hunter Craven had reached a position planned at the beginning. He turned on the radio silence and growled to his men, "Action." Then he suddenly jumped out of the dark with a dagger and a shotgun. He added to his dagger and pointed this specially modified and powerful shotgun at Laura not far away. X-23, "I'm really sorry. This time you should go home obediently. If you don't want your friends to be hurt, you should follow me obediently. Now there are 30 guns aiming at you." "Huh? Wait, something seems wrong." Craven looked around. "Where are the 30-odd guns and elite soldiers? Where did they go?" Chapter 727 Attention all units. Craven was a little confused, because it seemed that the script was not written in this way. Because according to the original plan, the moment he appeared, the other mercenaries who had already arrived would push the bullets into the gun chamber. Then more than 30 assault rifles pointed at their prey, and a perfect encirclement was formed. X-23's most threatening is close combat, and her adamantium claws are still very scary. Basically, nothing can stop her claws. So the initial plan was to pull the cart away and concentrate high-density firepower to directly pull her with firepower remotely. This is also the biggest weakness of X-23 Laura. She does not have the ability to attack remotely. At the same time, her recovery ability has not evolved to the abnormality of Logan, who can ignore the attacks of various weapons and charge under the impact of nuclear bombs. Anyway, Laura does not have this abnormal regeneration ability. It should be said that Laura is still young and her strength has not reached the peak. But even if she reaches the peak, her focus is different from Logan. Laura will not have the abnormal and terrifying regeneration ability of Logan, nor will she have Logan's strange strength. But in terms of speed and flexibility, they are far superior to Logan, and in terms of the diversity of attack methods, they are also superior to Logan. This is the biggest difference between the two, which is an advantage and a weakness. Laura has not grown to the peak state of her life, and in fact, Mindy has not grown to the peak state of her life. After all, the two are only 13 years old. It will take at least 7 years for them to grow to the peak state of their lives, including the various subjects taught by the Night Watch members, the various skills taught, and the equipment tailored for them. By that time, the extraordinary twins will be truly perfect. As for now, well, it's still a little short. At least now the two girls together are not Frank's opponent. So if Craven's arrangement goes well, it can actually threaten the two girls. After all, Mindy is just a flesh and blood body. If she doesn't wear a bulletproof vest, a bullet can take her life. But now, Craven feels that things are beyond his control. We agreed to go out together. Where are my soldiers? Where are my men? They were just here, so big, and so many Hydra minions. Where did they go? Exclamation mark. Craven was really confused, and the extraordinary twins who had not yet pretended to rob Colonel Stars and Stripes were even more confused. Mindy tugged at Laura's sleeve. Do you know him? Laura shook her head. No, I don't, but he doesn't look like a good person. Craven had a fierce face, and he had a stubble like a steel needle, and 2 mustaches. He looked like the villains and wanted criminals in Hollywood westerns. Mindy glanced at Colonel Stars and Stripes. He was still whistling and playing with his dagger. He didn't seem to worry about whether the 2 little girls who suddenly appeared in front of him were hostile to him. He even said, "Do you need help? It looks like that guy wants to hurt you." Mindy frowned and grinned. "I don't know where this idiot came from, but we can handle it." Laura whispered to Mindy, "He seems to be a member of the place where I was imprisoned before." At this point, the 2 girls actually knew the situation very well. The guy in front of him, who looked like a big bad guy, was indeed a big bad guy, and he was also a big bad guy who wanted to kidnap little girls. How to deal with big bad guys? Just like the animation The Powerpuff Girls that Laura liked, it was natural to punish them with a fist of justice. Craven was still shouting into his intercom, "Hello? Hello? Can you hear me? Where are the people? Where are you all?" There was only a rustling sound in response to Craven. Mindy had already unfolded her mechanical armor, and 2 metal exoskeletons wrapped around her 2 arms. She whispered to Laura, "Is this person a mental patient?" Laura's adamantium claws also stretched out. "I don't know, but many people in that place are very abnormal. Maybe he is indeed a mental patient." This is the judgment made by the 2 girls on the hunter Craven who was shouting at the intercom. But whether he is a mental patient or not, this guy must be taught a lesson anyway. Speaking of which, Hit Girl hasn't beaten anyone up for a long time. Thinking of this, Mindy already felt that her iron fist was thirsty. Maybe her so-called investigation of Colonel Stars and Stripes was just an excuse to beat someone up. Hit Girl's nickname fits her personality very well, and she has a certain degree of violent tendencies. After the 2 little girls were ready to deal with Craven, who suddenly appeared, when they solved the problem of Colonel Stars and Stripes. In the Night Watch command vehicle farther away, Mike, who was responsible for operating the unmanned reconnaissance aircraft, said, "It seems that this group of people are really coming for Mindy and Laura. Do we need to switch to lethal weapons?" "Damon, switch to the heavy gauze electromagnetic rifle and aim at the psychopath who likes to lick the dagger. If he makes any unusual movements, just blow him up," Frank communicated to Damon, who was ambushing in the car. "I've been ready for a long time." Damon laughed twice, but the laughter was a bit scary. At this time, Leegi couldn't suppress Logan anymore. He jumped up and rushed out of the command vehicle. Leegi only had time to shout at Logan's back, "We follow them secretly. If it's not necessary, don't expose your target. Otherwise, if they know we are secretly observing them, Mindy and Laura will be angry. If Laura is angry and doesn't eat, I won't help you to coax her, Logan." After listening to what Leegi said, Logan finally slowed down his pace, turned around and gave Leegi a fierce look, and then ran back. Then he grabbed Leegi. "Then you go with me. It doesn't matter who these people are now. What matters is that they intend to hurt Mindy and Laura. This is intolerable. We can find out where they came from later. But the most important thing now is to eliminate them before they pose a threat to Mindy and Laura." If it weren't for Frank and Damon eliminating the peripheral personnel this time, If Mindy and Laura came out alone, they might be hit. On Mindy and Laura's side, Craven's call was not answered, and he knew in his heart that something must have gone wrong. Maybe his group of people have run into some trouble, or even maybe the so-called capture of X-23 is actually a trap. Someone deliberately used X-23 as bait to lure his group of people to come and finally catch them all. Although he couldn't guess who was behind the scenes, Craven knew the use of this trap very well, because he often did it. So the most important thing now is not to capture X-23, but to prepare to escape. Hunters sometimes kill their prey. A good hunter knows how to advance and retreat. So when Mindy and Laura were about to rush over to catch him, Craven stepped forward, twisted his waist, turned around, and ran away like a cheetah. While running away, he switched the radio frequency to Pierce, prepare to evacuate. This is a trap. Someone has set up a big net and wants to catch us all. Mindy and Laura naturally did not intend to let Craven escape, so Mindy directly contacted Sam, who was hiding in the clouds. "Sam, come out to work." Mindy shouted very loudly, and the ultra-small drone that had been hovering in the distance captured the frequency band of the sound, processed the sound, and restored the pronunciation of the name Sam. Before setting off, Frank and Mike debugged all the drones and asked them to pay special attention to the pronunciation of Sam. So when Mindy shouted the name Sam, Mike had already received it and communicated it to others. "Attention all units, Sam is about to appear. Be prepared." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 728. If Infernal Affairs continues. Hunter Craven issued a warning: "We have fallen into a trap. Someone is deliberately ambushing us. All our advanced team members have been rude, and now we don't know whether they are alive or dead." This news was passed back to the AIM capture team. The person in charge of this operation, Donald Pierce, was originally repairing his mechanical arm. Hearing this news, he almost twisted the screwdriver crooked. "What's going on?" Pierce immediately connected the communication with Craven and asked him, "What happened?" Craven is now running away frantically. Maybe a little wolf and a little wolf's friend can't scare him. What really scares him is the feeling of falling into a trap. Since someone has designed a trap, it must be two ordinary girls who are dealing with him. Of course, the man wearing military camouflage and a red and blue headdress covering half of his cheek may be one of them. Since they can deal with those elite mercenaries silently, then maybe it won't be particularly difficult to deal with me. And if I am caught by them, who knows what will happen to me? Craven didn't think the mastermind behind the scenes would happily invite him to have tea. It was good enough to avoid being shot. So he solemnly informed Pierce of the situation and asked him to be ready to pick him up. Everyone should prepare to retreat. In terms of the night watch, Frank and Damon did not take action immediately. Because since the strange man came to capture Laura, it is very likely that he has accomplices. They want to play a long game and catch all these guys in one go. Since they want to hurt their daughter, they must be prepared to pay the corresponding price. This is a must. Leiji originally did not intend to participate in this matter, because he felt that with 4 daughter control people here, there was nothing they could not solve. Even if it was the elite of Hydra that came this time, they would overturn it for you to see, because we are fighting the elite of Hydra. However, the 4 daughter control people took into account that they and others were secretly observing Mindy and Laura. And this is what Mindy and Laura hate the most. Especially Mindy, she always felt that she was almost grown up and could stand on her own. So she became less and less fond of adult discipline. Simply put, when the little Lolita turned into a young girl, she also began to become a little rebellious. This is nothing. Almost every teenager will go through this period, the rebellious middle school period. As for Laura, she has always been on the same side with Mindy. The main means for the 2 girls to threaten adults is to not eat. Well, this is really a headache. The secret observation is exposed and it is likely to annoy the 2 girls. If they are all angry, they are likely to not eat together, so it will be very difficult to coax them. In the organization of the Night Watch, the people who actually have the best relationship with the 2 girls are Spider-Man and Nightwalker. Maybe because the age is not much older, there is not much generation gap between them. However, Spider-Man was regarded as a vivid example of a negative scumbag by Nightwalker because of the Black Cat incident and told Mindy and Laura. Let them pay attention to those bad boys and scumbags during adolescence. So the two girls' good impression of Spider-Man is on CD cooling recently. So Nightwalker has become a very important character. If the two girls get angry later, he will need to take the blame and be responsible for coaxing the two girls to stop being angry, especially not letting them skip meals. So Logan grabbed Lee Ji by the back of his shirt and quickly moved towards Mindy and Laura. Lee Ji could only be carried by Logan and shrugged helplessly. Well, I'd better not tell these four daughter-obsessed people the truth. In fact, Mindy hid a secret compartment under her bed and set a password. There are a lot of finger biscuits, ginger biscuits, gummy bears, Kinder Surprise eggs and brewable fruit drinks stored in it. Do you think it's true that the two girls skip meals every time? They just hide in the room to eat snacks. Will Mindy really let herself starve? What a joke. The seemingly innocent little Lolita is black inside when cut open. Forget it, Lee Ji still plans not to betray Mindy and Laura, otherwise he will definitely be treated like Spider-Man in the future. Now Mindy has refused to play WoW Dungeons with Spider-Man. However, when Lee Ji and Logan just arrived at a similar place, they just heard Mindy shouting, "Sam, come out to work." At this time, Logan took Lee Ji and hid. He wanted to see what the legendary Sam looked like. Lee Ji was also very curious about who gave the courage to the legendary boy named Sam. Who dared to pick up Mindy or Laura? Didn't he know that the more beautiful the lolly, the scarier it was? Just when Lee Ji and Logan focused their attention on the surroundings, watching where the boy named Sam would appear from. Just when they focused their attention on the surroundings, a blue-white light broke through the clouds and fell from the sky at a very fast speed. Like a meteor, it rushed from the sky towards the fleeing Kraven. Even at a considerable distance, Kraven could still feel the wind pressure brought by the high-speed flight. And the shock wave of the overflowing energy that overturned the ground. In the center of the blue-white light, a black figure loomed. Lee Ji took out a high-powered telescope from his belt and took a look. He saw a boy wearing a black uniform and a helmet that looked like a spittoon. Lee Ji took a breath and handed the telescope to Logan. "Is this guy Sam? He looks a little beyond our expectations. I thought he was a handsome boy. I didn't expect him to be a superhero." Lee Ji's worries are now gone. At first, he was really afraid that Sam was just an ordinary boy. If that happened, he wouldn't even have the chance to escape if he met four daughter lovers. But now, let's not discuss whether he can win or not. At least at this flying speed, he should be able to escape. At least this guy's life is saved, so he doesn't have to take out the shovel and plastic bag he prepared. What? What are the shovel and plastic bag for? Haha, guess. Lee Ji's heart is relieved, but Kraven is not. He now clearly feels that he must have been fooled. He fired several shots at Sam while running away. The specially modified shotgun is extremely powerful. It can penetrate ordinary bulletproof vests and even the steel plates of some light armored vehicles. But this gun can't penetrate the light circle outside Sam's body. Now Sam is chasing Kraven because he is very excited. After joining the Beyonder twins for so long, he can finally do something really big. In the distance, Logan, who is watching Sam flying at high speed with a telescope, finally frowned and looked at Lee Ji. It seems that this guy is quite powerful. Lee Ji nodded, "Yes, but I don't know where he came from. I still have to check his background later." However, Logan didn't pay attention to Lee Ji, but muttered to himself, "It seems that Mindy and Laura can't beat him together. Will they be bullied by this guy named Sam? This won't do. If this guy named Sam dares to bully them, he must be taught a lesson." Lee Ji hesitated. On the Hydra side, Pierce has already organized people. This operation was guaranteed. If he retreated now, he would lose all his face. Especially since Dr. Rice had just died and a new leader Stryker took over. Pierce was waiting to show his face. If he went back now, he would really not be able to mix with the inside in the future. So he had to pick up Kraven, but also to capture X-23, no matter what the cost. So he ordered everyone to enter combat readiness and prepare to break out. The Cougar, who was originally in a deep sleep, had woken up and was ready to fight. And the Master of Mimicry, who had been playing cards before, also took out his two specially modified high-powered pistols and said to Pierce, "I will pick up Kraven and do some fire support at the same time." Pierce nodded and motioned Master of Mimicry to do it. But Pierce could not see the faint smile under the Master of Mimicry's skull mask, nor could he guess the inner thoughts of this complicated person. Of course, Pierce and most people did not know another thing, that is, Although the master of mimicry was very cold on the surface, he also liked to wear a skull mask. He looks like a stranger who doesn't want to be approached, but he actually has a few friends. Although not many, they are all very special. One of the more special ones is called Wade Wilson. Well, this name is actually not known by many people, so let's use this person's nickname, Wade Wilson, Deadpool, currently working for SHIELD, position, Avenger. Chapter 729, I have already said that cutting benefits will not retain talent. Kraven was being chased by Sam and had to hide everywhere. If it weren't for the fact that they were running through the alleys of the city, with corners and narrow roads everywhere, Kraven would have been caught by Sam long ago. In fact, Sam was too soft-hearted. After all, he was just an ordinary 14-year-old boy. Although he was determined to become a superhero and now seemed to have the ability, he lacked experience after all. If he was ruthless and used a Nova charge on Kraven, Kraven would have been caught by him. Of course, it would be hard to tell whether Kraven was dead or alive after a Nova charge. If Mindy had Sam's ability, she would have charged without saying anything. She didn't care about knocking the bad guy who wanted to kidnap Lore through. Now that something unexpected happened, the two girls didn't care about trying to test Colonel Stars and Stripes. Instead, they kept following Kraven, wanting to catch him and see who instructed him to do this. If she found a mastermind behind the scenes, Mindy wouldn't mind uprooting him. Anyway, she has nothing to do recently, so she can just fight against the evil forces. What if the evil forces are too big, and the two girls plus Sam and Kick-Ass David can't solve them together? Mindy smiled disdainfully. Isn't this simple? Find reinforcements. So many adults behind are eating free meals. Laura and I were bullied, don't they have to help bully back? If this can't be done, then these adults are too shameful. Mindy has no psychological burden to ask the night watchman behind her to rescue her. After all, I am still a cute underage girl, still a flower bud, and I need someone to shelter me from the wind and rain. So Mindy is now determined to catch Kraven alive, and then use a set of interrogation actions to force a confession. This gives Kraven some room to dodge and maneuver. He keeps moving towards the evacuation point provided by Hydra, while constantly shooting at a back to delay. However, Sam's energy shield would not be penetrated by such an attack. The bullets fired were no different from mosquito bites to him. If Sam had not been afraid that the flying bullets would hurt Mindy and Laura who were following behind, Sam would have had to keep blocking the bullets in disguise. Otherwise, Sam would have been even faster. Kraven ran frantically. He didn't know how he had capsized in the gutter. This little wolf and her companions were a bit beyond his expectations. The only thing he could do now was to run away. It was impossible to turn back and fight. Because who knows if Pierce's group will abandon him and run away. If he turned around and entangled with these three guys, he might not be able to wait for reinforcements, but instead bought time for Pierce and others to escape. This crazy escape made Kraven a little exhausted. After all, his running speed could not match the speed of the Nova. If he hadn't taken advantage of the terrain, he would have been finished long ago. Kraven even felt that he might not be able to reach the evacuation point. Just when he was about to despair, a mimic master wearing a bionic exoskeleton armor and a skull mask appeared. He said to Kraven in a cold tone, "Run forward, I will help you provide fire support. By some time, we will attract the prey over. Pierce is ready." Hunter Kraven was almost moved to tears. A friend in need is a friend indeed. Usually this skull is silent, doesn't talk to anyone, and doesn't have a good relationship with anyone. But he is indeed a leader in the mercenary world, and there is a reason why he is ranked so much higher than me. This responsibility alone is incredible. Being a team member with such a person, you can trust him with your back. Kraven gave the imitation master a grateful look, and then said to him solemnly, "I'll treat you to a drink when we get back." The friendship of men is beyond words. Kraven felt warm. Then he turned and ran, leaving his back to the imitation master to take care of. This kind of person is worth trusting. Kraven had a smile on his face, and felt that he had made a confidant for the first time in his life. Bang! With a gunshot, Kraven's entire left leg was completely broken. Only a small amount of flesh was still connected. And the master of mimicry, who was just praised by Kraven as someone he could trust to his back, was holding a specially modified high-powered pistol and said in that cold voice, "What a fool." Kraven's leg was disabled. His gratitude to the master of mimicry instantly turned into a kind of anger of being betrayed. "What are you doing?" The master of mimicry said in an incredible tone, "Can't you see? I'm betraying you." He actually admitted it so shamelessly. Craven didn't know how to say the words he had originally thought of. He opened his mouth and could only say, "Pierce and the others will not let you go." The master of mimicry smiled and said in a very disdainful tone, "Really? But I'm afraid there is no chance." As he said this, he opened a cover on his armor. There was a red button inside, and the master of mimicry gently pressed it down. Boom boom boom. Explosions came one after another, like heavy bombers dropping bombs. The direction of the explosion was exactly the direction of Pierce's convoy. All these changes were too sudden. Not only Mindy and the other two who had been chasing Craven were dumbfounded. Even the daughter control team members who had been secretly observing from behind were a little confused. What happened? Wasn't the guy with the skull mask in the same group as them? Did we meet the legendary marginal person / 25-year-old traitor middleman? And the hunter Craven didn't know what to say now. His short-barreled shotgun and dagger flew far away when he was shot and fell. Now he couldn't even stand up with a broken leg. Craven could only point at the nose of the master of imitation and roar, "Why? Why did you do this?" The master of imitation said disdainfully, "Because I am a mercenary." Well, the master of imitation is a mercenary. What is the principle of mercenaries? Naturally, they work for whoever pays more. The saying "whoever has milk is the mother" is not a humiliation for mercenaries, but a compliment. Please. We fight to the death just to make money, okay? Do you still want to talk about ideals, morality, and the core values of building a harmonious capitalist society with a group of mercenaries? Isn't the core value of capitalism to look at money? Exclamation mark. The master of imitation feels that he is a very, very legitimate successor of capitalism. Because he thinks that few people can look at money as thoroughly as he does. What thieves have their own code of conduct. The most important thing for a gang is the word righteousness. What once you enter a door, you are family, all these things he sneers at. Humph, am I stupid? I am the successor of capitalism, not the successor of socialism, and I still tell you about the 5 talks and 4 beauties and the construction of spiritual civilization? The master of imitation said so. My only relatives are Franklin and the Queen of England printed on the banknotes and the string of numbers behind them. Just look at the friends that the master of imitation associates with and you will know who is his best, closest and most lifelong friend. Deadpool Wade Wilson. When have you ever seen Deadpool talk about morality? Of course, as long as there is enough money, he will also talk about morality. Deadpool doesn't like to do bad things, it's just because no one pays him to do good things. If Tony Stark is willing to waive money to let Deadpool be a volunteer to help people cross the street in New York, Deadpool will definitely be willing to do it. There is no distinction between high and low jobs, but there is income. As the saying goes, birds of a feather flock together, or heroes think alike, and villains smell alike. A person who can be brothers and friends with Deadpool, do you expect his integrity? As for why the master of Taskmaster did what he did today, he had a very private underground meeting with Wade a long time ago. As for the private talk, we can talk about it later. The reason that induced the master of Taskmaster to make up his mind to do this is actually very simple, because after a deep understanding of Hydra, he came to a conclusion. And it was this conclusion that made him decide to be a middleman / 25. This conclusion is very simple, but it played a decisive role in the choice of the master of Taskmaster. That is, the basic welfare benefits of Hydra are really too poor. Chapter 730. Sorry, we just want to stand with the winner. Yes, it is an indisputable fact that the basic treatment and benefits of Hydra have been further reduced. And this is an important part that affects the final decision of the master of imitation. Everything is virtual, only money is real. In fact, Deadpool had private contact with a master of imitation a long time ago. Because Wade is not stupid, being a mercenary is a bloody business, and it is impossible to do it for a lifetime. Either tug a bolt ashore to retire, or die in an unknown dark corner one day. These two options are not very good for people like Deadpool and Master of Imitation, because they are better and more ambitious than ordinary mercenaries. At least you can't run a tavern after retirement to spend the rest of your life, right? If your life goal is to open a tavern, then what is the point of all the hard work and bloodshed over the years? So in order to find a way out for the second half of their lives, the two good friends spent a year or two thinking about their own way out. In the end, the two of them figured out a basic clue. Either continue to mix in the underworld society, mix to the top and become the king of mercenaries, or even run an organization yourself. In this way, you will have a certain support in the future. Or you can completely clean up your name, use your own skills and understanding of some dark societies as bargaining chips, and join a formal organization. In this way, you will have a backer, and you will not be afraid of being repaid in the future or revenged by your enemies when you are old. Mercenaries are also very realistic creatures. They are not like those in Hollywood movies, where they leave after an assassination, hiding their merits and fame. That is impossible. There are all kinds of entangled things to deal with. There are not so many happy endings in this world. Every industry has its own hard work, and Wade and Master of Imitation are no exception. In addition to their own expenses, they even need to take out part of the money to give to the families of some friends who died in the battle before. Those are real friends. Just like Deadpool and Master of Imitation. These are all burdens, and it is difficult to continue just wandering in the rivers and lakes. So the two of them made a plan in private, that is, one side will find a way to join the largest terrorist organization group, and the other side will join the largest government law enforcement group. Then they figured out the situation inside, and figured out the living conditions inside, and whether they could shelter the two from the wind and rain in the future. So Deadpool Wade Wilson was arrested and entered the S.H.I.E.L.D. prison because of an accident, and did not escape or help other prisoners when the S.H.I.E.L.D. prison was captured. Instead, he helped S.H.I.E.L.D. after Hawkeye offered $1 million in exchange. These were all planned by Deadpool Wade Wilson. Of course, the various ways he used to pit Hawkeye later were also necessary. Wade is very mean. In fact, he is not only mean, but every part of his body is mean. So there is Deadpool's real idea here. He feels that he must get the 1 million. This is his labor income and formal income. On the other hand, it is also testing where S.H.I.E.L.D.'s bottom line is and whether it can tolerate him. If Captain Rogers had not found Lee G at that time and persuaded Hawkeye to sell all the copyrights within 10 years to Lee G, and then get 1 million to give to Deadpool. Instead, he chose to use violent arrest, then Deadpool would definitely not want the 1 million, but he would never have any possibility of cooperation with S.H.I.E.L.D. in the future. It may even turn into a confrontation, which is what Captain Rogers does not want to see. No one in this world is a fool, not Deadpool, not Rogers, and not Lee G. So in the end, Deadpool joining S.H.I.E.L.D. seems to be an unexpected coincidence, but in fact many things are carefully calculated by Wade Wilson. On the other side, Taskmaster also got in touch with Hydra. Starting as a peripheral mercenary, at first he just took on some tasks that Hydra was not convenient to do, or there were not enough people to complete. For example, the last robbery of the Dutch bank was actually a diversion for Hydra. Bullock asked Taskmaster and others to rob the bank, but he sent someone to steal the information of the Sentinel. This was unknown to other mercenaries, including Taskmaster Masters. However, this did not hinder their work. What Masters needed was to gain the trust of Hydra. Further enter the interior of Hydra and find out the truth about Hydra. Finally, judging whether Hydra is a good place to go is the most important task of Taskmaster Masters. Hard work pays off. After a period of running in and testing, Masters and others were gradually absorbed into the middle level of Hydra. Although they have not yet entered the core circle, they are no longer cannon fodder on the periphery and can be abandoned at any time. At least Taskmaster, Cougar, Hunter Craven and Pierce are still very important to Hydra. They are the most important pillars in the entire organization, excluding the periphery, and the middle-level forces supporting the entire organizational structure. At this point, Masters can know a lot of things. Because he is looking for the last nest for himself and Wade, not those idiots who have no tomorrow after today, so he pays attention to a lot of things. For example, he cares about the basic benefits of Hydra, including the calculation of basic salary and bonus, and the payment method of medical insurance and pension insurance. However, the final result is not satisfactory, because through various investigations, Masters came to a conclusion that Hydra is on the decline. The reason is very simple. He secretly observed 12 samples of peripheral personnel close to the middle level in Hydra Inner Mongolia, and 11 of them died one after another in more than a year. The only person alive, Damon, complained every day that his basic salary had been cut and that he had been sent to South America. In fact, Damon's situation was not uncommon. The salary within Hydra really began to decline, although it was not very obvious. But Masters made a mathematical model and calculated a basic formula. With the current level of rising world prices, If Hydra employees want to maintain the same standard of living, their salaries need to be increased by about 3.5% of the average salary level each year, which is the lowest increase. This is the only way to ensure that the salary increase outperforms the CPI, Consumer Price Index, increase. However, Masters analyzed the collected data and found that Hydra's average salary increase has been less than 1.5% for 3 consecutive years, and this year there has been no increase at all. If you add in staff reductions and welfare changes, such as the cooling fee being changed to iced Pepsi, the salary level is actually down 1% year-on-year compared to last year. It seems to be a small number, but it is enough to alert Masters. Because Hydra, for example, has industries all over the world and employs hundreds of thousands of people, not to mention the ordinary workers and managers who work in Hydra's factories without knowing it. A group of this size is actually very resistant to risks. Hydra has survived several financial tsunamis and made a fortune in them. For example, the 1998 Asian financial crisis was Hydra's action to secretly push a circle of capitalists to fleece Asia. But after 20 years, things have changed. Many things have changed. Masters, the master of imitation, wants to find out where the variables are. In fact, this variable is not difficult to find. Everything started with a return of Red Skull Schmidt. Schmidt returned strongly and completely swept out the original Hydra senior executives, especially the disobedient ones. He completely unified the power of Hydra, but it came at a price. For example, the Hydra personnel inside S.H.I.E.L.D. were sacrificed like a hero, although those people had been found in Nick's phishing plan at the time. But giving up actively and catching passively are still different. Masters couldn't comment on whether Schmidt did the right thing, and he didn't want to comment. But he knew that the biggest disadvantage had been exposed at the time. That is, Hydra lost its affiliated unit. Yes, you read it right. This is the biggest hidden danger of Hydra. It lost a unit that can be attached. In fact, Hydra has never really operated alone. During World War II, Hydra was affiliated with the Third Reich's organization, and its internal personnel were supported by the Third Reich. After the defeat of the Third Reich, Hydra changed its thinking from whole to zero and attached itself to units in major victorious countries, including the United States. It was supported by these countries. In short, Hydra is sucking the blood of these countries to strengthen its own strength. This includes personnel training and wages, and a series of expenses that Hydra does not need to spend money on. Those industries spread all over the world are Hydra's biggest capital. They are like a huge pixie ooze that only takes in and does not go out, accumulating huge capital for Hydra. But a turning point has appeared. Hydra now has no affiliated units. Since the fall of SYNOPSIS, Hydra's tentacles have to recycle a considerable part. Although there was no loss of manpower, it could no longer suck blood from government departments such as S.H.I.E.L.D. In this way, all the pressure was concentrated on Hydra itself. You need to feed hundreds of thousands of employees around the world. You have to know that the combatants are completely off-duty, and some shady scientific research projects do not generate profits. There are also equipment maintenance costs and regular updates, and things like that cannot be reimbursed by a sucker. And all of these are money-burning projects, and there is no profit at all. Take S.H.I.E.L.D. as an example. The organization's annual expenditure is close to $20 billion. This is pure expenditure and will not bring any direct economic benefits. The money thrown to S.H.I.E.L.D. is for them to burn, don't expect any output. If you have to say it, it is to help the country's output stabilize. But does this make sense for Hydra? No. Every year, hundreds of thousands of off-duty people who do not generate profits are mouths open, and they are all supported by those peripheral industries. How difficult is it? Hydra is a big family with a lot of money to make money and even more places to spend money. Why is it said that Hydra's treatment is not as good as that of the Brotherhood of Mutants? Because Magneto has gathered fewer people. As the saying goes, a small ship is easier to turn around, and fewer people are easier to share. Hydra can't do that. Try to cut off 100,000 peripheral cannon fodder. As long as you dare to cut off, you will be guaranteed to not be able to recruit people in the future. And Masters also found a very important point, that is, Hydra's industry is a little backward, or can't keep up with the times. Many of Hydra's profitable projects are concentrated in traditional fields, including various mining resources and equipment manufacturing industries. This is due to the technical accumulation of the former Third Reich, which allowed them to take one step ahead. But now it's not possible. Tony Stark's new energy technology has emerged and broken the balance of all this. Many traditional industries have become yesterday's flowers and sunset industries. Banks began to slow down financing, and the number of customer orders began to shrink. Although it is just a sign now, this sign has begun to become very scary. Because Masters got some internal information from Deadpool, Captain Rogers mentioned intentionally or unintentionally during the internal meeting of the Avengers that it would be a new era in the future. Although the Captain never gave a specific explanation, this was enough to attract the attention of Masters and Deadpool. Hydra, which has no future, no benefits, and is almost a broken dinghy but still thinks it is a million-ton ship, is no longer good. They are aging and swelling, and Leader Schmidt can't save this swollen organization. So Masters has been waiting for an opportunity, a moment to betray Hydra and whitewash himself. In fact, if the situation is reversed, Hydra is thriving, and S.H.I.E.L.D. is going downhill. Then Deadpool Wade Wilson will not hesitate to stand up and betray S.H.I.E.L.D. as a stepping stone for his advancement within Hydra. I'm sorry, we are mercenaries. Maybe there is a little morality, but we have long been swallowed by this dark world. We tell irrelevant jokes, live irrelevant days, and look at irrelevant goals. All this is just to cover up how terrified we are about real life. I'm sorry, we just want to stand with the final winner. P.S. Daily Ticket Request. Chapter 731. Let's change the condition. This time, Hydra's plan to capture X-23 failed completely because Masters, the master of mimicry, turned over Pierce and others as a token of his surrender. Before the operation began, he installed powerful explosives on those vehicles and even tampered with some weapons. When Lee G and others had to come out to clean up the mess, they found that everyone, including Pierce and Cougar, had died in the violent explosion. Master of Mimicry was very ruthless this time. He prepared high explosives with a power equivalent to 300 kilograms of TNT on each car. The explosion power was no different from a direct hit by a heavy aerial bomb. To put it bluntly, if an explosion of this power occurred in a naval battle, it could directly sink a 5,000-ton destroyer if it hit the side string directly. The explosion was so powerful that the serial explosion of more than 30 vehicles was like a carpet bombing of Florida by several B-52s. The terrible explosion could be heard in almost every corner of the city, and several blocks at the center of the explosion were completely destroyed. The only thing to be thankful for is that the residents there had already been relocated due to the disaster, otherwise there would have been countless casualties. However, these were necessary for Masters the Imitation Master, because he had to make a tragic enough pledge of allegiance to completely clear himself. This kind of approach of completely breaking off relations with Hydra requires confidence. The night watchman hiding in the dark could no longer sit still and observe the squad secretly. This was no longer a simple matter of Mindy and Laura having a boyfriend. Although it was a big deal for the two to have a boyfriend, now that Sam had appeared, there was naturally a way to deal with it properly. However, the situation in Florida, which was attacked, was an emergency, and it was also a more important matter at the moment. So Lee G and others in the dark had to come out. Frank, Damon and Mike had already rushed to the explosion site to search for survivors, and also went to clean up the mess. Lee G and Logan rushed directly from the dark to Masters at the fastest speed. Lee G's thunder knife had been drawn out, and the purple thunder on the knife was flashing, and it was not easy to mess with at a glance. And Logan's adamantium claws were also revealed. Mindy and Laura were a little surprised by the sudden appearance of the two, but now Lee G and Logan couldn't take care of them. Lee G said to Logan, "Logan, go take Mindy, Laura and their children away. I'll finish here." Logan walked towards the two girls expressionlessly and took them away. And Logan said to Sam in a cold tone, "You, come with me too." Lee G now has no time to care about how Logan and the subsequent four daughter-loving group discipline their daughters and how to deal with Sam. Anyway, judging from the situation just now, Sam should be able to run away. And now Lee G needs to deal with this man with a skull mask. Lee G's lightning blade is flashing. He doesn't know what this imitator is planning, nor does he know what this man wants to do. But what he did just now made Lee G instinctively feel that this guy is a bit dangerous. Although he doesn't seem to want to take action now, Lee G still wants to subdue him first. But before Lee G could make any move, Masters, the master of imitation, threw out all the weapons on his body, and knelt in front of Lee G with his hands on his head. This is a standard posture for prisoners when they are arrested. Masters had no intention of confronting Lee G at all. He knew who the man in front of him was, the famous night walker in New York City. And according to intelligence, he had a good relationship with Captain Rogers. So Masters knelt in front of Leegi with his hands on his head, and said in an attitude of completely giving up resistance, "I surrender, I want to see Captain Rogers, I have information to exchange for my freedom." Leegi was slightly stunned. It seemed that he really ran into a complete traitor this time. The big explosion in Florida caused quite a stir. After all, there had just been a typhoon here. If there is another terrorist attack, will the residents here still be able to live? So someone must come forward to take responsibility for this big explosion, and it goes without saying who will take this responsibility. Anyway, Hydra has done this kind of work more than once or twice, and this matter itself was done by them. So Captain Steve Rogers held a press conference at the first opportunity. According to the investigation, the mastermind behind the Florida terrorist attack was also Hydra. This is a new terrorist attack after the last attack on Doctors Without Borders and the International Red Cross. Facing the camera, Captain Rogers spoke freely. "We don't know what Hydra's real purpose is yet, but we need to resist and confront this anti-human behavior with the most resolute determination." Fortunately, no one was injured in the terrorist attack this time. Including the New York Justice League and civil organizations such as the Night Watch, they immediately thwarted Hydra's conspiracy and made their plan fail. Here I once again appeal to the world that it is the responsibility of all mankind to eliminate Hydra. We can't let a group of lunatics destroy our peaceful life. The above is all the content of Captain Rogers' previous TV speech. As for what he said about not knowing the actions inside Hydra, that's not certain. New York, the Delta Wing headquarters of SYNOPSIS. So, do you want to get out of Hydra completely? Steve Rogers sat in front of Masters, the master of imitation, and asked, tapping the table with his fingers. All of Masters' weapons had been removed, and he was only wearing an orange uniform, which was a uniform for short-term prisoners. "Yes, I'm tired of being chased and beaten, and I don't want to live the life of a mercenary anymore. I hope to live a somewhat normal life in exchange for my intelligence." Masters was no longer wearing the scary skull mask. He was an extremely strong and majestic middle-aged man with many scars on his face, crisscrossing. It was hard to believe how he survived these injuries. Rogers held a folder containing some information provided by Masters, all about Hydra. This was part of the intelligence he had thrown out, but he kept many key parts confidential. These things that could be revealed were just a drop in the ocean to see what SHIELD was offering. Captain Rogers scratched his chin with the edge of the folder, and after a long pause, he said, "If you can provide accurate information, then I can swear on my own behalf. You can live a stable and superior life in the second half of your life. You can go on vacation and live anywhere you want. But you only need to come to see me once every 6 months." Rogers stared at Masters with great seriousness. This was the most suitable price he could offer. Because Masters' information was so important, during his time in Hydra, he even had control over most of the industries and secrets of the entire Hydra. Except for a few core ones that were only managed by Schmidt alone. Masters looked at Captain Rogers and said, "I don't doubt your character, Captain. But this is not the life I want, because it is not what I want. We should change the terms." Chapter 732, Can't Keep It Hidden Anymore. The toilet-headed teenager Nova feels that his life seems a bit unlucky. No, that's not right. Not a bit unlucky, but very unlucky. Sam, who grew up in Carefree Town, was originally just an ordinary teenager. His mother worked in the supermarket in the town, and his father was a school janitor who liked to drink. He was usually responsible for repairing toilets and so on. And this old drunkard liked to daydream. He often told Sam about how powerful he used to be, fighting aliens in the galaxy to protect the safety of the universe and so on. When Sam was very young, about 6 years old, Sam always regarded his father as the most powerful idol and hero to worship. This is very normal. Many children's idols when they were young are their parents. They think their mother is the most beautiful woman in the world and their father is the greatest hero in the world. Sam is no exception, but as he grows older, he begins to get tired of his father's bragging about traveling in the galaxy, saving the world and so on. And he also patrolled the third and fourth cantilever arms of the galaxy with a group of guys called the Guardians of the Galaxy, and so on. When Sam was a child, he didn't understand anything and thought that what his father said was true. But as he grew up, when he boasted to other classmates at school, he was ridiculed instead of envied. Later, Sam felt that he had seen through his father's true colors. He was a drunkard who loved drinking. He boasted every day, and he was his only listener. He didn't work well at school, and the things that needed to be cleaned were often messy. Sam had to clean up his father's mess after school and after class. Life was so painful, until one day his father suddenly disappeared. Sam was not surprised at all. It was a miracle that such an irresponsible man was willing to stay in a broken place like Worry-Free Town for 10 years. He rolled away as far as possible with his drunken smell. Sam felt that he didn't need a father in his life. He was simply his biggest stain. Until he found his father's Nova helmet when he was sorting out old things at home, Sam's cognition changed everything. His father didn't lie. He really traveled in the galaxy with a group of people and saved the galaxy many times. He and the companions he mentioned, Star-Lord Peter Quill, the female swordsman Gamora, the irritable Rocket Raccoon, Drax the Destroyer, and the Tree Man Groot. All those stories are true. Just like many young people want to truly understand their parents before they can feel grateful for their past efforts for themselves. At that moment, Sam understood why his father returned to Earth and gave up his identity as a member of the Nova Corps. He gave up his merits and his great reputation in the galaxy because his mother was pregnant, and the child in her belly was Sam. To become a father, he needs to give up a lot. Maybe it was that kind of giving up that made him lost, and eventually he turned from a hero into an alcoholic. Sam asked his mother where his father went. But his mother didn't know. She could only tell Sam that his father's choice must have a deep meaning. His departure was not a simple escape. He sacrificed too much for this family. So when Sam put on the Nova helmet, he was determined to become a superhero like his father. And the journey of a superhero began in New York. Although this journey was full of twists and turns from the beginning. But Sam never thought that this journey would be so bumpy. It was fine to be accepted as a younger brother by Mindy and Laura, but this younger brother still ran errands every day. He was responsible for helping the two little girls collect specialty snacks from all over the United States. Well, that was nothing. Sam was willing to do it. But he wanted to be a hero. Where was the starting point of being a hero? Now that he finally had a formal mission, Sam was very excited. Who cares about being a deputy of the Justice League? It was good to have a mission. But this mission was interrupted before it even started, and a group of guys suddenly appeared who wanted to kidnap Laura. Well, this was even better. Sam had long wanted to increase the favorability of the two girls, just like some development games. Do some small tasks, increase the girls' favorability by +5 +10, and keep increasing it, and finally achieve achievements to receive clearance rewards or something. But this time there was another small twist, as if Mindy and Laura's parents suddenly appeared. Sam, who was still planning to increase the girls' favorability, instantly miscalculated. He was taken back to New York, where he was stared at by 4 scary adults who looked unfriendly. They were also questioning him about his relationship with Mindy and Laura. In view of their scary faces, Sam told them everything clearly, including his name and address, where he went to school, how many people were in his family, how he got his abilities, etc. He also took out the takeouts he had bought for Mindy and Laura this month, what each takeout was, and the receipts for the food, and handed them over to Frank and Logan. The two of them were the most fierce and the most scary. So, this kid is actually just a courier. Luigi raised a dozen receipts in his hand, including hamburgers and fried chicken from various fast food restaurants, sausages and hot dogs provided by some well-known food trucks, etc. It seems that Mindy knows how to point people to the right positions. Knowing that Sam can fly fast, she actually asked him to bring hot dogs from Hollywood Boulevard in Los Angeles back to New York to eat. Luigi said after looking at a receipt. Mindy chuckled, "This is my strength." Damon patted Mindy on the back and said seriously, "We didn't compliment you." This time the misunderstanding was resolved. Mindy and Laura didn't have a boyfriend, and Sam was just an errand boy. Although this guy seemed to be interested in the two girls, his silly look showed what he was thinking. Don't expect to chase the two girls with this performance, it's too stupid. Now there are several problems for the Night Watchman to solve. The first is whether what Sam just said is true, about his father and the so-called Guardians of the Galaxy. Of course, Luigi knows the name of the Guardians of the Galaxy, so he speculates that what Sam said is probably true. But now Luigi can't tell everyone that he knows about the Guardians of the Galaxy, but Luigi decided to talk to Sam alone when he is free. Another thing is why Mindy, Laura and Sam want to test a deputy of the Justice League, Colonel Stars and Stripes. Although Mindy often does things when she is bored or when she is bored, she still has a reason for doing all kinds of things, no matter how ridiculous the reason is. So several adults in the Night Watch raised their questions. Why do you want to test Colonel Stars and Stripes? Everyone was very curious about this. Only Frank touched his ears. He seemed to know something. Facing everyone's questioning, Mindy shrugged easily. It's very simple. I suspect he has a problem. The black cat we caught appeared in the same place as him. Mindy looked at everyone when she said this. She didn't know who dealt with a black cat in the end, but everyone else in the Night Watch knew it. So Lee G and others all turned their eyes to Frank. Frank smiled and shook his head. Well, I knew that this matter could not be concealed for long. I said that there was no need to take off my pants and fart like this. It would be better to tell it frankly at the beginning. Frank didn't seem to think that he really concealed anything. He just smiled to make fun of it. Lee G asked curiously, Frank, what do you know? Frank nodded, I know something. In fact, I should have told you a long time ago, but he didn't let me. But now I can't hide it anymore, so it's better to tell you. It's about Nick Fury's insurance plan. Chapter 733, Colonel Stars and Stripes' Identity. Nick Fury is a person in the system, but that doesn't mean he likes to follow the rules. To be honest, if the leader of an organization like S.H.I.E.L.D. is a person who follows the rules, the organization basically has no future. So after S.H.I.E.L.D. fell, his superiors wanted to hold him accountable, which Nick had expected a long time ago. He also entrusted Captain Rogers with the follow-up matters. After S.H.I.E.L.D. left Nick's leadership, Hill and Rogers were still able to hold up the whole scene. In the secret trial in Washington, Nick didn't even argue too much with the bigwigs of the Security Council. Is it because he already knew that things could not be changed, and there was no point in arguing? This is not like Nick's character. He is a person who wants to try to deflect the bullets shot at him even if he is about to die. Admit the crime and go to jail? Maybe others would do this, but Nick would never. So, you mean Nick Fury was not really arrested? Lee G sat at the meeting table of the Night Watch and looked at Frank and asked. This time it was a secret meeting within the Night Watch. Mindy, Laura and Sam had been driven into the room to play video games. Logan thought it was better for him not to ask about this matter, so he went to play games with Mindy and Laura. Logan swore that he was definitely not there to monitor Sam. Frank nodded when he heard Lee G's question. Yes, it is impossible for him to be arrested so easily. And it is not Nick's character to quietly stay in jail. Those bigwigs of the Security Council think they can control Nick and S.H.I.E.L.D.? Naive. Mike sat aside and didn't say anything. He never liked S.H.I.E.L.D. Whether Nick went to jail or not, he didn't care at all. However, Damon asked with great interest, if Nick is not arrested, then who is imprisoned in Washington? Frank smiled and shrugged. Nick has his own way. There are many strange people in this world, and you can always find a replacement for him. Or there are other ways to deceive those big masters. So, Nick is not really in prison. The one inside is just a substitute or a shadow? And Nick Fury is actually outside at ease. Lee G has roughly figured out this matter. He even speculated whether Nick secretly asked for help from the Inhumans. Mutants must have the ability to imitate the appearance of others, and the Inhumans may also have it, and they will not be tested for X genes, so they are safer. Nick himself has communicated with Black Bolt for more than 10 years. I believe it is not difficult for Black Bolt to find such a person among his tribe. This understanding is not wrong. He actually does not trust the officials in Washington, including those in Congress. Let's not talk about the corruption of Hydra. Just talking about the integrity and moral standards of politicians themselves, they are not trustworthy. Frank and Nick are old friends and know their old friend's character very well. There are not many people in this world that he can trust. I am one of them. In fact, I always think that he needs to trust our Night's Watch. At least what we do is never for personal purposes or interests. And I just said that Nick Fury does not believe in the moral standards of these politicians, so he needs to prepare some backup measures. In case S.H.I.E.L.D. has to compromise and give up some things under official pressure, it will have backup measures. Frank looked around at everyone. There are many secret materials and various special items inside S.H.I.E.L.D. These things are very threatening to the world. If they are kept by the wrong people, the consequences will be disastrous. If Captain Rogers and Agent Hill fail to keep those things, Nick will definitely use his own means to protect them. He doesn't care which country's army he is facing. Frank's words are very meaningful. Lee G probably guessed that maybe Frank was worried about something like the Cosmic Cube. Lee Ji also advised Rogers that such dangerous things should be handed over to others for safekeeping. Giving it to the Ancient One or throwing it to the Odin treasury are both good choices. Anyway, it is better than leaving it on Earth. Because this thing is likely to attract the attention of powerful people in the universe, maybe the Ancient One can stop it, maybe not. And S.H.I.E.L.D's research on the Cosmic Cube so far has only produced some powerful weapons, and they are not the kind that are so powerful that they are against the sky. The benefits and risks are not proportional. But I don't know if Nick Fury will agree to hand over the Cosmic Cube. Lee Ji bit his upper lip with his lower teeth. So, Colonel Stars and Stripes is Nick Fury. This is Lee Ji's guess, and it is also the guess of several other people. Because from the information just leaked, this is the most credible guess. As for Colonel Stars and Stripes, he's a middle-aged white man, and he is not blind in one eye or anything. Since Nick can find a shadow to go to jail for him, there is nothing wrong with disguising himself as a white man. But what no one expected was that Frank shook his head gently. If Colonel Stars and Stripes is Nick Fury, then Mindy and Laura would not be able to find him. Although it seems a bit boastful, he is the king of agents. Well, what Frank said does make sense. Can Mindy and Laura find the clues of Nick Fury who is hiding so easily? If they can find it, then in terms of reconnaissance and stealth, the two girls have reached a very outstanding level. Then, who is Mr. Stars and Stripes? Lee Ji suddenly became curious. Frank spread his palms, a fanatical fan of Captain America. His fanaticism for Captain America is far greater than Agent Coulson in S.H.I.E.L.D. He is the real #1 fan. Lee Ji didn't quite believe what Frank said. Who else could be more fanatical than Coulson? Frank continued, his name is John F. Walker. He participated in the Vietnam War at the same time as us. After the war, he joined SHIELD with Nick. He is a fanatical fan of Captain America, and imitates the captain in his speech, behavior and even fighting moves. And at that time, a new generation of super soldier serum was being developed, and John volunteered to participate in the experiment. He wanted to become the second Captain America. Frank shook his head. Lee Ji knew that the result might not be very good, so what happened later? Not very successful. It was indeed unsuccessful. The development of the new generation of super soldiers was a failure. The ability can only reach 80% of the captains, which looks good. But there is a huge hidden danger, that is, it is easy to be irritated and have a bad temper. This is a very fatal weakness. All the people who participated in the experiment were abandoned, and many people did not survive the 5th year after the experiment for various reasons. Frank said with a sigh, and John was secretly protected by Nick. Nick and I have tried to find a way to cure his rage so that he can return to normal life as much as possible. It's not easy. It took almost 20 years for John to control his temper and become a normal person again. Because he used to be an agent of SHIELD, but now he is forced to live in hiding. Nick and I call him American Agent, but he prefers to call himself Colonel Stars and Stripes. When Captain Rogers was serializing comics under the pen name American Dream, the protagonist in his comics was called Mr. Stars and Stripes, and he also raised a wolf dog named Liberty Bond. John not only named himself Colonel Stars and Stripes, but also raised a wolf dog like him. That's why I say he is Captain America's #1 fan. Frank explained the origin of Colonel Stars and Stripes, and everyone understood it. Some of Colonel Stars and Stripes' self-introduction to kick-ass was not wrong, such as he was a Marine, in the 1960s, and had fought in the war, Vietnam War, and now he joined the Justice League because he wanted to contribute to society. I just don't know if joining the Justice League was his personal idea, or Nick Fury gave him the order. So Lee Ji raised the most important question, so what does Nick Fury want to do? What is the relationship between Black Cat and Colonel Stars and Stripes? If I can tell you, Frank, I want to know. Frank nodded. I didn't intend to hide anything from the beginning, but Nick was a little too cautious. Now that I can't hide it anymore, it doesn't matter if I tell it all. It may be a good thing. Nick's backup plan is to set up another super team outside the Avengers, and let the super criminals who are still curable make up for their sins and make some contributions to the world to offset their sins. Huh? Lee Ji felt so familiar when he heard this, as if the Illuminati dealt with Magneto in this way. Frank continued, and the name of this organization is Thunderbolt Team. P.S. John F. Walker, from the Marvel comic Captain America, is a person who worships Captain America but has a bad temper. He is not a bad person, but his temper is his biggest shortcoming, So he sometimes envies Captain America. He is a guy with a weird personality. After transformation, he became an American spy and learned the shield fighting technique created by Captain America from Masters, the master of imitation. Later, he became the third Captain America. However, due to the various experiences after becoming Captain America, John realized that the gap between him and Captain America was not simply due to the gap in ability, but from the gap in heart, so he finally resigned from the position of Captain America. So, did any students guess the identity of Colonel Star-Spangled Banner? Chapter 734, A Good Place for the Winter Soldier. So, Black Cat just joined the Thunderbolts as Nick requested. And the person in charge of the contact was Colonel Stars and Stripes. Frank explained how Mindy and Laura met Colonel Stars and Stripes and Black Cat together. It's not that Colonel Stars and Stripes is a criminal, on the contrary, he is the one who supervises criminals. And all this is arranged by Nick Fury. He needs someone to make backup preparations. Frank didn't particularly agree with Nick's plan. In fact, I once proposed this plan before Nick carried out this plan. The Night Watch is actually more trustworthy than those criminals who have made meritorious contributions. But it's difficult to change what Nick has decided. I can't dissuade him if he wants to do this. Lee Ji was not surprised. Nick is an extremely determined person in many ways. But the other side of a determined character is likely to be stubbornness. And Nick Fury is no exception in this regard. He can trust Frank, but he may not be able to fully trust the Night Watch, because he can't control the overall situation in this organization. So he would rather start a new mountain and do something behind the scenes than be controlled by others. But then again, if Nick really wants to join the Night Watch or something, Lee Ji really thinks it's troublesome. Because Nick is used to being the boss, let him be a younger brother? Even if Nick is willing, others including Lee Ji will have a knot in their hearts. Especially Mike and Nick will definitely not get along. So it is not necessarily a bad thing for the Night Watch for Nick to start another mountain. And the problem about Colonel Star-Spangled Banner has been clarified. At the same time, after Frank told Lee Ji about the nature of the Thunderbolts, he suddenly thought of one thing and one person. That is Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier who was thrown into the Kamartaki Black Prison. This guy is a hot potato. It is troublesome to let him go and it is also troublesome to lock him up. Especially during the days of imprisonment, the drugs originally used to control Barnes have been discontinued for quite a while. This made his memory begin to appear intermittently, like a marquee. He could occasionally recall the days of fighting the enemy decades ago, and sometimes he would recall the memories of the Winter Soldier more than a decade ago. The mixed memories made him unable to tell who he was. Now Barnes felt a little confused. However, he was awake more than confused. The original Winter Soldier was a killing machine and would not speak outside of the mission. But the last time Len came back from Kamartaki, she mentioned that when she went to see Barnes asked to see the New York Times of the day. This proved that his condition was beginning to improve. Maybe one day he would remember everything, and it might not take too long. But when his memory was fully restored, the real trouble began. What if he asked to see Steve Rogers? You know, the captain now appears in various media pages from time to time. If Kamartaki provides newspapers for Barnes to read and help him recover his spirit, Barnes will soon know that his old friend is not dead like himself. At that time, it will be difficult for Lee Ji to deal with this matter. It is not good to keep Barnes in prison, because you don't know if the captain will find clues about Barnes that day. Because although the Winter Soldier has been carrying out various secret missions, can we say that there have been no clues left in the past few decades? As long as we follow the clues, there will always be clues. If it is released, the happy ending of Barnes and Steve's reunion is very touching. But it will also bury hidden dangers, that is, Barnes is responsible for the affairs of Iron Man Tony Stark's father. Then it looks like a happy ending, but in fact it is like the foreshadowing at the end of the first season of the American TV series. Those foreshadowings will always explode in the second or third season. There are many such dog blood routines. Lee Ji doesn't want to repeat this ghost routine. And now, the appearance of the Thunderbolts has given Lee Ji a choice. Nick Fury needs a super criminal who is brave and resolute and willing to repent for his crimes? Who else is more suitable for this condition than the Winter Soldier? Exclamation mark. If there is no protagonist halo or other accidents, just looking at the physical data, the Winter Soldier with a modified mechanical arm is at least the fighting power of 3 American captains. Of course, it is not certain in a fight. Proficient in multiple languages and various mechanical and hacking technologies, he has perfect experience in stealth assassination. The most important thing is that it is true that the Winter Soldier is a super criminal, but Bucky Barnes is not. As long as he recovers his memory, Lee Ji believes that Bucky will regret the crimes he committed during the Winter Soldier period. If he is asked to make meritorious service while serving his sentence, will he be willing? Lee Ji thinks it should be no problem. Even if he has to persuade him, it won't be a big deal. In this case, Nick Fury has not been caught yet, and Nick was Roger's boss before, and he also has an old relationship with Howard Stark. With this identity, Lee Ji thinks he is the best candidate to take over Bucky Barnes. Who else can this hot potato be thrown to if not the former director of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Anyway, whoever wants to take it can take it. I won't take this hot potato. In an instant, Lee Ji has come up with various ways to persuade Nick to take over Bucky Barnes and let him take the blame. Anyway, Nick himself is black, and it doesn't seem like he is taking the blame. So the moment he figured it out, Lee Ji said to Frank, "Frank, can you notify Nick Fury? I have an important matter to discuss with him. This matter may be related to whether there will be a split within S.H.I.E.L.D. And the person who can solve this matter may be only Nick Fury." Frank looked at Lee Ji in surprise. "Is it very important?" Lee Ji, "Very important, Frank. I'm sorry, it's not that I don't believe you. But the fewer people involved in this matter, the smaller the impact." Frank nodded to show that he understood Lee Ji's thoughts. "I will find a way to notify Nick, but it will take some time. His current location is a bit mysterious. Is it in the Inhumans' capital?" Lee Ji guessed that if this is the case, then the Inhumans' affairs should be resolved by the way. At least he should meet the leader of the Inhumans, Black Bolt, and not let the Inhumans and mutants have fierce conflicts. Magneto's anti-X plan left a huge mess to clean up. Lee Ji patted his head to express his helplessness. After all the things here were dealt with, several daughter lovers said that there was nothing important left. They needed to have a good chat with Sam. Lee Ji waved his hands. "Don't kill him, that kid looks like he has the potential to be a superhero. Maybe he can become one if he is given some training." Lee Ji added in his heart, "The premise is that he should not be fooled by the beauty of Mindy and Laura." After knowing that Sam is not an ordinary boy, Lee Ji has been relieved. At least even a shotgun can't penetrate his protective shield, so he should be able to withstand the love of fathers. Lee Ji plans to go to Kamartaki to take a look at Barn and see how he is doing recently. But before he can go, Captain Rogers' communication came through. "Emergency meeting. This time we have a chance to completely eradicate Hydra." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelists. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 735, Conditions of Imitation Master. At the emergency meeting of the Illuminati, Captain Rogers brought a very detailed document about Hydra. Everyone was a little curious about how he got this document. Captain Rogers had to explain. It was not easy for Captain Rogers to get the information from Masters. He paid a lot of conditions to get the information about Hydra, but it was still worth it in terms of value. Master Masters, the master of imitation, provided very useful information, but the conditions he proposed were also very, how to say it? If you have to find an adjective to describe it, Captain Rogers thinks it should be painful. Yes, it's just boring. When Masters first proposed that he wanted better conditions, Captain Rogers thought he was asking for political asylum plus a mansion, a huge sum of money, and a 100-foot luxury yacht. If Masters really wanted these things, Captain Rogers could still find a way to get them for him. S.H.I.E.L.D. can also squeeze out some funds for this. After all, S.H.I.E.L.D. has reconciled with the military and Congress, and they are not suppressing S.H.I.E.L.D.'s budget and not passing it. In this way, S.H.I.E.L.D. will not be forced to let Hawkeye sell himself because it cannot pay Deadpool's 1 million yuan. After all, that was an exception. From various aspects, it is quite embarrassing for Hawkeye to sell himself for 10 years in exchange for $1 million. So from Rogers to Hill, they all think that it is better to only embarrass Hawkeye, not the entire S.H.I.E.L.D. So if Masters can provide real and useful information, then Hill is willing to pay for it this time. After all, the fall of S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters last time made S.H.I.E.L.D. very embarrassed, and they need to save their face. And this time, Hawkeye does not need to sell himself, not to mention Black Widow Natasha, Insurance salesman Kelson and the like, Hill will not allow them to go out to sell. After all, it is enough to lose face once. So when Captain Rogers negotiated with Masters, he was ready for him to ask for a sky-high price. At most, he would pay the money down. Rogers remembered that Lee Ji said when chatting with him that the key to bargaining is to cut it in half. Half, half, and half, and finally you can get the price you want. But what surprised Captain Rogers was that although Masters asked for political asylum, he did not have any more material demands except for a sum of money. And the amount of money he wanted was not much. $20 million in exchange for all the information he got from Hydra was a very cost-effective thing in many aspects. If everything was like this, Captain Rogers could immediately agree. But Masters made a request later, and this request made Rogers a little confused. I don't want my skills to be wasted, that would be a pity. Let me live a life of drunkenness and dreams until I die of old age. This kind of life is an insult to me. Masters said. Captain Rogers thought for a while and said, so what do you want to do? Join the Avengers? Join the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, and then become a special agent? Masters smiled and shook his head. First of all, let's not talk about whether I like the Avengers and the Avengers philosophy. Even if I want to join, you, the captain, won't allow it. Rogers didn't say anything, because Masters was right. Captain Rogers couldn't allow Masters to join the Avengers, because no one could guarantee that he was a double agent. Masters continued, joining the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents is the same. You won't allow me to get in touch with any secrets, even if it's a slightly confidential mission, right? I don't like being a chores in such a department. I'm the king of mercenaries. Masters' words were very confident, and Captain Rogers believed what he said. Just look at how he easily killed a fully equipped Hydra team in Florida this time. The king of mercenaries is not those idiots who can only speak with muscles. In terms of physical fitness or special abilities, there are many people in the mercenary circle who are better than Masters. But those muscle men or superpower men were killed by him in the end. Why? Because Masters was smarter than them. If you can kill with a bullet, don't use a dagger. If you can use a dagger, don't use fists. This is Masters' creed. Since you can guess that it is impossible for us to let you really join, so what are your requirements? Rogers told the truth. We will not agree to anything that is too demanding. Masters shrugged. It's not particularly difficult. I just don't want to be a useless waste. If I'm idle, I will enter a midlife crisis. If a mercenary king enters a midlife crisis, it will not be a good thing for the world, right? You always have to let me do something so that my life value can be continued. Rogers, so, what is it? Instructor, I think this position is very suitable for me. In fact, my biggest dream when I was a child was to become a glorious teacher, to impart knowledge and answer questions for the next generation to build the future of mankind. But then I found that the competition in the education industry is too fierce now. Academic qualifications and experience are required. If you want to teach in a good school, you even need a recommendation from the school board, and they only want experienced teachers and are unwilling to accept young graduates. This is simply stifling the talents of countless young people. Masters said indignantly. So in this situation, although I majored in mathematics and economics in college, I couldn't find a suitable teaching position. So I had to join other jobs and finally became a mercenary. I can only say that everything in life is impermanent. Fighting and killing are not my natural hobbies. If I were given the right position at the right time, maybe I would be a lecturer or even a professor in a certain university now. Captain Rogers tried his best to control his emotions and not let his mouth open. Because if what Masters said was true, then the birth of the king of mercenaries in this world was really a very, very big surprise. And now Masters said a request that Captain Rogers would never guess, so now I want to realize my dream when I was young, I want to be a teacher. Rogers pondered for a long time before speaking, but we can't easily arrange you to work in any school now. This was just an excuse. Rogers' real thought was, do you know how bad the children you educate will be in the future? Exclamation mark. Masters nodded. I know it's hard for me to move into a real teaching position now. That's why I said I'm willing to be an instructor at S.H.I.E.L.D. I can help you educate your employees. Let them understand how real agents and mercenaries should work. And this is the condition Masters proposed. The Illuminati looked at Captain Rogers blankly. Lee Ji asked in disbelief, so? That terrible traitor has become a professional instructor within S.H.I.E.L.D. In the future, this guy will be responsible for the employee training within S.H.I.E.L.D. Li Ji still can't believe that the traitor who didn't care about honor and knelt down when he saw him has now become an instructor at S.H.I.E.L.D. It's not that I don't understand, it's that the world is changing too fast. P.S. Masters, the master of imitation, has the habit of being a teacher in the original comics. I have made some appropriate adaptations here. Chapter 736, sometimes the solution to a problem needs to be tricky. No matter how much Captain Rogers paid, no matter how many conditions S.H.I.E.L.D. agreed to. But at least one thing, Masters is now completely on S.H.I.E.L.D.'s side. His behavior of completely breaking off with Hydra will make him completely break with the dark forces in the future. At least no one will dare to ask him to be a mercenary to perform tasks. Because who knows whether the master of imitation will sell them out. And it was Masters who did things thoroughly enough, so he was sincere in his letter of surrender. After analysis, Captain Rogers and Hill held a meeting to study the Absolute, and agreed that Masters would become an instructor of S.H.I.E.L.D., responsible for teaching new employees fighting skills. As for other things, the two leaders of S.H.I.E.L.D. temporarily suppressed the courses such as stealth reconnaissance that Masters wanted to open. After all, Masters cannot be fully trusted now. But even so, after receiving the money and getting the position, Masters still readily revealed everything he knew, including the industries of Hydra that he controlled, both formal and illegal. There are also some plans and research projects of Hydra, as well as the location of research institutions. Although Masters may not know everything about Hydra, as long as half of the information he revealed is true, then as long as these things are attacked, it will be enough to hurt the vitality of Hydra. Crack down on Hydra's illegal industries, and monitor the formal industries at the same time. Captain Rogers knocked on the table. Masters has worked in Hydra for more than a year and nearly 2 years. He has accumulated a lot of important information, and he used to specialize in mathematics and economics. He analyzed Hydra, and now various symptoms have appeared within Hydra. Rogers handed the collected and organized information to other people in the Illuminati, and asked everyone to look at the information while saying, "The scale of Hydra is larger than we imagined. Their industries are spread all over the world, which makes them extremely powerful, but on the other hand, the organization has become bloated. We all know what troubles an overly bloated organization will bring." Tony flipped through the information and said, "Big company disease." Li Ji also glanced at the information and said, "I think it is easier to understand if it is called bureaucracy." Captain Rogers nodded, "Yes, this is the most fatal point of Hydra now." Masters' analysis still makes sense. He grasped the most critical point of this organization. They are on the decline. And the starting point of this downhill road is the impact of the industrial structure transformation and new energy sources that the Earth is facing now. Hydra is a large company with a large business, and has layouts in many traditional industries, but now these former industries have begun to become burdens. Captain Rogers pointed out the energy resource-based and traditional processing industries that occupy a general position on the Hydra industry list. Hydra needs a large number of manpower and a large amount of funds. Therefore, the traditional energy resource industry is the economic pillar, and the processing industry is the population digester. Both are indispensable. But Tony, your new energy plan breaks this point. Rogers pointed out the key. Li Ji flipped through the information and said in agreement, "That's right, whether it's Stark Group's arc reactor or China's current nuclear power plant style controlled nuclear fusion. The birth of this kind of energy will greatly change the industrial structure of the entire world. When energy is cheap enough to be almost free, many things that we couldn't put into production due to energy costs can be mass-produced." Captain Rogers nodded, "Yes, this is the problem that the entire industrial organization is facing in transformation. Wall Street bankers have begun to slow down their investment in traditional industries and tighten their money supply. At the same time, a large amount of funds have been transferred to new industries. Now the hottest investment projects on the market are beginning to focus on space colonization. As we mentioned before in the meeting, create an official starport for SWRD. Sky City as its headquarters. Originally, this plan was difficult to get approved. But Wall Street bankers are like hungry wolves asking for food. They have a lot of money to invest, but now they can't invest in traditional industries that are facing elimination. The space industry and new energy are their most important directions. They need to add fuel to this industry. Even if I only need to mention the starport plan to these bankers occasionally at the cocktail party, they will use all their connections to persuade Congress, persuade their agents, and even persuade leaders of other countries in the world. Rogers smiled and shook his head. The power of capital is really terrible. Professor Charles also read the information and analyzed it. In fact, I think that Hydra actually wants to attack New Energy. When New Energy just appeared, but at that time Schmidt had just returned to power and did not fully grasp the power. When his power transfer was just completed, Jason happened to propose a plan to divert the conflict between the Brotherhood of Mutants and the government. Marx's attention was all focused on attacking Hydra. It was a perfect intersection in time, so that Hydra had no time to take care of New Energy, and could only fight the Brotherhood of Mutants wholeheartedly. Professor Charles said this while praising Li Ji's original plan, and at the same time, he also said something good for Marx. After all, Marx is now a labor camp prisoner of the Illuminati. As an old friend, Charles still hopes that Marx will have a day to change his mind. At the same time, he also hoped that others would be able to accept him by then. Captain Rogers knocked on the table to attract everyone's attention again, so this time I hope that even if we can't completely destroy Hydra, we can at least seriously damage Hydra. With this information, we can do a lot of things. Thor, who had been dozing off just now, suddenly became energetic. Want to fight? I love it the most. Take me with you. Thor is still worried about the three women. He has been in a bad mood recently, and he has always wanted to have a good fight to vent. Li Ji patted Thor on the shoulder and said, maybe, but fighting alone may not be enough. Li Ji pointed out the key. Hydra has so many formal industries, and the heads of many of these industries may not even know that they are Hydra people. We can't get rid of them all. Captain Rogers agreed. This is the key. We can't use completely violent methods to deal with Hydra. These industries are spread all over the world, and the number of employees adds up to millions. We can't create a terrible wave of unemployment. The impact of millions of people losing their jobs at the same time is much more terrible than a terrorist attack. Tony touched his beard and finally said calmly, so the only way to solve economic problems is with economic means. Rogers, this is what you want to say, right? That's right. Rogers clapped his hands. We can directly destroy the underground illegal industry. SHIELD can take action, and Thor, you can also help. And the Night's Watch has been doing these things. But destroying Hydra cannot simply rely on physical means. I tried this 70 years ago, but failed. So I learned a lesson and I understand what the real lifeblood of Hydra is. Captain Rogers smiled confidently. It's not those overwhelming miscellaneous soldiers, nor those endless black technologies. There is always only one thing that controls the lifeline of Hydra, and that is the economy. Captain Rogers said loudly with a high attitude. Whether it's a hero or a villain, money doesn't come from the wind. Just like when we formed the Illuminati to build a base on Venus, if Jason hadn't come up with a good idea and established one technology company to sell the hair tonic and various cosmetics developed by Dr. Hank. Without this income of nearly $1 billion per month, we simply couldn't support the Illuminati. Rogers mentioned the hair tonic, which seemed to touch Tony's sore spot. In addition to Iron Man, he now has two other nicknames circulating on the internet. One is the Bald Nemesis, and the other is the King of Cosmetics. Many people say that the protagonist of the popular Japanese animation One Punch Man did not encounter Tony, otherwise he would have been defeated long ago. After all, Tony has the title of Bald Nemesis. Tony still remembers who called out this nickname first, and he stared at Li Ji with a bad look. In response to Tony's look, Li Ji could only respond with an awkward but polite smile. Hey. Rogers did not notice the private conversation between Tony and Li Ji, and he continued, the same is true for Hydra. They also need a lot of funds. Funds are their blood. Without blood, poisonous snakes are dead. So this time we are not going to simply physically attack Hydra. It doesn't make much sense. What we want is to bring them down economically. The economic base determines the superstructure. This sentence was given to me by the master of imitation masters. This gave me a lot of inspiration. It's a pity that I didn't go to college, let alone study economics. Otherwise, the problem of Hydra might have been solved long ago. Captain Rogers expressed regret for his lack of education. So the most important purpose of my calling everyone here this time is that we may need to develop a detailed economic warfare plan. I have a suggestion. If possible, I hope that Stark Group and Dawn Technology Company will do it. Rogers turned his head to the direction of Li Ji and Charles. I also hope that Jason can convince Harry Osborn, and the professor can convince your former student, Roberto Costa. Let the Osborn Group and the Costa Group join together. At the same time, I will also find a way to incite and confuse those Wall Street bankers and capitalists who have always wanted to get some inside information from me. We will form a legion to attack Hydra's industry, tear them all apart and swallow them. Let Hydra collapse because of the economic crisis. After listening to Captain Rogers' plan, Li Ji couldn't help but give him a warm applause. As expected of being the most outstanding tactical expert during World War II, Captain Rogers' plan this time is indeed tricky, and it is guaranteed that Schmidt, the leader of Hydra, is unimaginable. He may know about Master's betrayal, or Schmidt is preparing for war. Prepare for a head-on confrontation with S.H.I.E.L.D. But why? We are all raised by our parents, and the lives of villains are also lives. Especially those guys who joined Hydra simply to find a job. Their duties may only be to watch the warehouse or burn electric welding or something, and they have never shot and killed anyone in their lives. Just being killed by a superhero who fell from the sky? This is too unfair to them. So, it is better to kill Hydra's industry so that they can't pay wages. In this way, the members inside Hydra will naturally not do it. Hydra has to support hundreds of thousands of various personnel inside. As long as the industry is broken, they will naturally collapse. The way to disintegrate a powerful organization is not to touch its hardest place, but to find the soft spot and hit it. Only a fool will fight Hydra head-on. How many people will die? 100,000 or 200,000? So, after considering it, the method proposed by Captain Rogers is probably the best. There was no reason for Li Ji not to stand up and applaud Rogers, and he said sincerely, "Captain Rogers, I think this is a good idea. I think the Red Skull Schmidt and Hydra might be preparing for war. This time I am afraid it is like hitting cotton." Rogers smiled. "This is also a war, but it is an invisible war. Of course, we probably need to invite some economic experts from the Horizon Foundation to consider how to minimize the unemployment wave in this financial sniper war. This time it is estimated that many people will lose their jobs, but after all, unemployment is better than losing your life, right? P.S. For daily tickets, I heard that there will be double monthly tickets at the end of the month. You can save up and vote for me on the 29th or 30th. Chapter 737 is a bit too down to earth. The Illuminati unanimously agreed to Captain Rogers' plan to encircle and destroy the Hydra economic circle. It completely cuts off the source of Hydra's economy and all their sources of income. It does not rely solely on force to carry out the war of annihilation. Because the destructiveness of armed attacks is too great. There are hundreds of thousands of Hydra members. If they really have to fight head-on, it may cause a war. The members of the Illuminati do not like war, unless it is an unavoidable conflict. It is best to use non-violent means to solve it. There is a saying that war is just a continuation of politics. If Hydra can be annihilated by political and economic means, it is very cost-effective. Especially when Tony Stark, Roberto Costa, and Harry Osborn, the leaders of the three major groups, met privately and discussed how to divide the interests of Hydra's industry. The three of them have reached a common goal. Eradicating Hydra is not only the most helpful for global counterterrorism, but also from a personal perspective. After getting a lot of intelligence from Masters, the three big groups can easily attack the weak points of Hydra's companies, so that they can swallow up these industries at a small cost. Of course, after acquiring these industries, a big purge is inevitable. This is why it is said that there is a possibility of unemployment. Of course, some industries are not easy to acquire, so for such industries, they can simply suppress them all the way to the end, and completely squeeze the Hydra industry until it goes bankrupt. This is another factor that will cause unemployment. So here, the Illuminati also needs to ask economic experts to measure how to reduce the scale of unemployment. Although unemployment is terrible, it is not as terrible as war and killing. Hydra's stay in this world is a disaster and an unstable factor. Especially now that the Earth era is shifting to the Universe era, everyone, including Li Ji, does not want to continue this disaster to the universe. Choose the lesser of two evils, and this economic war must be started. And speed is required to prevent Hydra from jumping off the wall after it reacts. Of course, if Hydra is really facing collapse in the end, then Schmidt will definitely be desperate. So the Illuminati must be prepared for the possible final counterattack. Master's intelligence mentioned the Sentinel robot and the X-weapon plan. Unfortunately, he didn't know much, but he knew that the Sentinel robot plan seemed to be suspended because Dr. Rice, who was in charge of the project, died. And a new person named Stryker took over the plan and continued the X-weapon plan. Everyone is familiar with the name Stryker, but no one thought it was General Stryker, the radical anti-mutant faction in the military. Because he should be dead, many people have seen the lethal injection. And now this person named Stryker may just have the same name, which is also quite common. However, Li Ji still reminded that although the Sentinel robots that appeared before were very weak, it is not known whether the subsequent Sentinel robots will become very strong. Especially this kind of machine is used to deal with mutants. And now many people have made the X gene dominant because of the fake drugs sold by the fake drug king marks. It would be a trouble if this kind of broken robot is everywhere. Fortunately, the manufacturer, Dr. Rice, is dead, so it should be difficult to upgrade the Sentinel robots. And manufacturing these robots also requires a lot of resources and funds. As long as this economic annihilation war cuts off the economic supply of Hydra, the manufacturing of Sentinels will come to a standstill. So this economic war is more urgent than imagined. However, it is difficult for Li Ji to intervene in such urgent matters. These economic plunders involving the three major groups and the Wall Street Wolves are handled by special people, and Li Ji does not need to worry about it. If he really has something to worry about, it is Bucky Barnes. Now Captain Rogers and Tony have a very good relationship. During the days of the Illuminati, the two of them can be regarded as having a pleasant cooperation. But sometimes love can easily turn into hatred, and this guy who is prone to love and hate is the unknown Bucky. This guy has caused too much trouble. Considering the current status of Tony and Rogers, if the two of them fall out, it will be much more terrible than the movie Captain America 3, The Avengers that Li Ji watched in his previous life. Li Ji has contacted Nick Fury through Frank. He is ready to send the Winter Soldier over to make Nick's Thunderbolts team more complete. But this still requires some preparation. At least he needs to confirm the current situation of the Winter Soldier. At the same time, he also needs to think about how to make things clear to Captain Rogers and Tony. Because this matter cannot be hidden. The deeper it is hidden, the greater the backlash will be in the future. So Li Ji plans to go to the Black Prison in Kamardaki to see the situation of Bucky, the Winter Soldier. In addition, since he has to pass by Kamardaki, he will also go to see Doctor Strange and Doctor Doom. After all, Doom is related to the Eurasian super high-speed rail plan laid out by the Illuminati, and now Dr. Banner is busy building railways in Eastern Europe and Asia. And Strange is also an old acquaintance, although the impression of Strange in the past was very bad. But he was willing to change his mind and quit his high-paying job, abandon all kinds of fame and fortune, and join the public welfare organization Doctors Without Borders. This alone is very admirable. So when visiting the two, Li Ji bought some Emmental cheese and cognac that goes with cheese as souvenirs. Doom and Strange are both people who like to enjoy life. Both of them like to drink Remy Martin. Doom, who was born in Eastern Europe, likes cheese very much. Strange can't be said to be as fanatical about cheese as Doom, but he likes it quite a lot. And things like cognac and cheese are impossible to provide in Kamardaki. According to Lan's description, the food in Kamardaki is very simple, and most of the meat is boiled jack beef. Vegetables are mainly onions, carrots and potatoes, and occasionally some green leafy vegetables are made. Drinks include milk, kumis, barley wine and black brick tea. In fact, although such meals are simple, they are still nutritious. But Li Ji estimated that Doom and Strange would not be able to get used to eating these foods. So Li Ji found the chief steward Wang of Kamardaki with the small gifts he brought, and asked him to take him to see the two people who were studying in Kamardaki. Wang was a little curious about the cheese and Remy Martin cognac in Li Ji's hand. Is this food for those two guys? I'm not being nosy. These two foreigners are the most picky eaters I've ever seen. A few days ago, the one named Daum said he wanted to eat cheese, and we happened to have purchased a batch from the foot of the mountain. I heard that he liked it, so I gave him a little more. But he threw it all away after only 2 bites. From his tone, Wang was very angry at Daum's behavior of wasting food. Li Ji patted Wang on the back to calm him down. I think it's probably a matter of taste. There is a difference between the cheese produced in Inner Mongolia, China and the cheese in the West. Most of the Chinese cheeses are relatively fresh, and they won't be stored in a cellar for 5 years like this one before being eaten. Li Ji raised the block of cheese in his hand and said, I don't think you can get used to this kind of Western cheese. Although it and the one produced in the pastoral areas of Inner Mongolia are both called cheese. Wang shook his head. It's up to you. Anyway, you can eat these things if you like. If you don't eat them, you'll starve. The study of a mage is very hard, and cheese is a source of high-quality protein. If you don't like it, you can only endure the hunger, because food is rationed anyway. The practice of kamartaki is not a vacation. Although it cannot be said to be the kind of ascetic practice, the system is still very strict. Li Ji agreed with this. He looked at Wang and asked, "By the way, how are these two people doing recently?" After Li Ji asked this question, Wang's expression was a little subtle. So? It should be said that it is still pretty good, but this kind of good depends on how you define it. Li Ji was confused. What does it mean to define good? Good is good, bad is bad. How else can it be defined? While Li Ji was still confused, Wang had already led Li Ji to where Doom and Strange currently lived. It was a large house, but it looked very simple. Master Ancient One was good to them and gave them a spacious house. Although the decoration is very simple, there is a relatively open martial arts training ground, where you can exercise your body and practice fighting. Speaking of which, after Strange came here, his axe and knife skills have become more and more sophisticated, and he has completely mastered the wood-cutting knife method and the 18-plate axe method. Wang said as he was about to knock on the door. Although he knew that mages needed to learn various fighting techniques as a foundation, when he heard Wang say such down-to-earth names of sword and axe techniques, Li Ji couldn't help but complain in his heart, why not just teach Strange, 5 tigers breaking door knife, and, blue character 18 breaks? Just as Li Ji was mumbling, he suddenly saw a flash from the corner of his eye. There was a hidden weapon. Chapter 738, They Really Love Each Other. Li Ji glanced at the corner of his eye, and saw a black object flying out of the window of the room at an incredibly fast speed. Oh no, there is a hidden weapon. Li Ji really didn't expect that there would be danger in Kamartaki. He turned around and dodged, avoiding the route of the hidden weapon. At the same time, he stretched out his hand and grabbed the hidden weapon. But why is this hidden weapon so soft? And it feels a bit like cotton fabric? Li Ji looked closely and found that what he was holding in his left hand was a pair of pure cotton socks that had not been washed for who knows how long. It should have been dark gray, but now it is a combination of dark gray and black. Although he didn't put it under his nose to smell it, just through visual senses, Li Ji knew that this thing must be very smelly. EWW. Li Ji immediately threw away the smelly socks in his hand. He felt that he almost wanted to vomit his overnight meal. He was now very eager to use detergent to disinfect his left hand. Wang looked at the smelly socks that Li Ji had thrown on the ground and said non-committally, "Oh, it started again." What started again? Li Ji resisted the urge to chop off his left hand and asked, "When did smelly socks start flying everywhere in Kamartaki?" Before Wang could answer Li Ji's question, a fierce roar came from the room. "Doom. If you keep throwing your dirty clothes into my laundry basket, especially if you put your smelly socks in the pile of underwear I'm going to wash, don't blame me for being rude to you." Li Ji heard that this voice should be Strange's voice. The other lazy voice should be Doom's, and he asked with a hint of playfulness in his tone, "You're welcome? How are you going to be rude to me?" Strange took a deep breath in the room, staring at Doom with his eyes, and he made a harsh statement. But it was just a harsh statement. How do you want Strange to deal with Doom? Haha. Outside the room, Wang said to Li Ji, "That's what I said. They have a pretty good relationship recently." Li Ji opened his mouth and said after a long while, "But this is clearly a conflict. How can you tell that they are good?" Wang curled his lips. "So, it depends on how you define the word good. You know, love and affection between brothers or appropriate friction are ways to enhance feelings. Especially Strange, although he is very tough, he is actually very kind. Although he doesn't accept it, he always helps Doom wash clothes in the end. This makes their relationship more harmonious. Isn't there a saying that the person who can make all kinds of jokes with you is your true friend? I think this should describe the relationship between these two people," Wang said with a look of relief. But Li Ji had an expression of aha. This Wang seems to have made a mistake. Li Ji didn't hear any love or jokes between brothers from the conversation between Doom and Strange just now. This is completely Doom relying on his own strength to bully his junior fellow student Strange. This should be considered a very serious and excessive behavior in an educational institution. Whether in the United States or in China, shouldn't school bullying be severely cracked down on? Doesn't Kamartaki care about the bullying phenomenon in the process of wizards learning? Doom is bullying Strange, right? It's just that Strange doesn't dare to fight back. Li Ji believes that if Strange couldn't beat Doom, he would have killed Doom long ago. Taki has some household appliances, but Guyu believes that except for some necessary modern household appliances for communication and information, such as TVs and computers, Taki does not need to purchase other household appliances. Because handling one's own housework is also a kind of practice, just like Lan. She masters various household magic, including commanding brooms to clean the room by themselves, rags to automatically clean the dust in the house, or clothes to take a bath and clean themselves, etc. It is not the powerful magic that destroys the world in those online novels. This is a kind of existence that is closer to magic. Lan's magic can do a lot of things, not just space magic. And she also said that these seemingly simple little magics are actually much more difficult than making a fireball. A wizard who can make a fireball with a power comparable to that of a 350mm naval gun may not be able to make a broom clean a 10 square meter room obediently. Because this kind of magic pays more attention to details and requires higher magic control. To reach a high level of magician, these seemingly insignificant little magics must be learned. It can even be said that the level of this little magic can determine the height of your mage's achievement. Because fireballs are just simple and crude things. The more advanced the spells, the stricter the subtle control. Magic is actually a very rigorous thing. Taki holds a magic competition every year, which is a bit like the sect competition in some online novels. However, this sect competition is not to let two mages stand on the ring to hold up the magic shield, and then you won fireball and I won lightning. That kind of competition is too boring and meaningless. Li Ji remembered Lan saying that the exam question for the year-end magic competition in Taki 2 years ago was to manipulate 3 paper clips to perform a short play, and the time should not be less than 15 minutes. Lan was almost exhausted after doing this question. A powerful female mage who can easily warp tens of thousands of kilometers and can manipulate part of the space would be so strenuous on such a seemingly absurd question. And this is how Taki trains mages. After all, the growth of magic power of mages needs to be released and then restored. It's like fitness, tearing the muscles first, and then letting the muscles grow. Ancient One's Taki does not have the legendary huge martial arts training ground, and the practice wall that can be bombarded with magic hundreds of thousands of times without being damaged. Of course, there will not be a disciple who bombards a fireball in front of the practice wall and collapses the practice wall that has not been damaged after being bombarded hundreds of thousands of times. As a result, it will be noticed by Ancient One and found that the child is gifted. Well, if all this happened, Taki does have a practice wall, and someone did collapse it. The first thing that Ancient One thought of was that the life of the practice wall had expired and it was time to replace it. Instead of thinking that this boy was so extraordinary or something. For these reasons, if you want to live a good life in Taki, you must master various magics. Ancient One will provide certain conveniences in life, but not all. For example, Taki does not have such things as washing machines, and mages are basically sweaty after a day of practice. The training intensity is no different from that of gladiators. It is a chore to wash clothes when you are so tired. Therefore, the first magic that mages who come to Taki master is often not to make fireballs or release lightning. Instead, they master a magic called turbine water flow. It sounds very grand, but to put it bluntly, it is a simple magic that imitates the movement of a drum washing machine. In this way, you can free your hands and don't have to wash clothes. When it comes to real high-level mages, such as Lan, she can command the clothes to line up and jump into the bathing pool to take a bath by themselves. Just like a group of real people, if she wants, she can also let these clothes sing while taking a bath. Li Ji always finds this incredible when he sees this kind of thing. He wants to ask the principal, but Lan always smiles and doesn't answer. Well, everyone has their own little secrets. And Strange and Doom, who just joined, don't seem to have fully mastered the magic of turbine water flow, so they have to use the most primitive hand-washing method. Do you expect Doom to wash his dirty clothes honestly? Naive. Since there's a free laborer, junior brother, why not use it? Strange dares to show his teeth to him. No problem, if you have the guts, hit me. Doom couldn't wait. This will just make Strange unable to take care of himself and make him withdraw from the competition for the position of Supreme Sorcerer. At the same time, because he is acting in self-defense, Ancient One should not be able to say anything. Doom's calculations are very good, and it seems that Strange is also a very bold and tough, hardcore person. But every time he wants to provoke Strange, he doesn't fall for it and will endure it in the end. This makes Doom's evaluation of Strange higher and higher. A bold man, with outstanding wisdom and the ability to bend and stretch, this junior fellow of his is not simple. But Doom never knew the pain of tears in his eyes every time Strange washed his stinky socks. Chapter 739, Changed the Name. Strange felt wronged and bitter. As the world's top neurosurgeon, how could he have suffered such a thing? He was ordered around like a handyman. How many times did Strange want to swing the lancet, medical, in his hand in the dead of night? Here is the trachea, here is the artery, here is the spinal nerve, and here is the central nervous system of the entire lower body. Just a slight cut can make the world-famous tyrant Doom a paralyzed vegetable. But how many times did Strange raise the knife in his hand and hesitate for a long time? It was not because he couldn't do it, but because the monitor on Doom's iron mask glowed red when he slept at night. Strange didn't know if the other party was asleep. What if it was a trap? Of course, as an outstanding medical student, Strange had other methods, such as putting a trace amount of N-nitrosodimethylamine in the water Doom drank. This thing will melt quickly and be colorless and tasteless if it is put into water in a small dose. As long as the dose is small, it is difficult to be discovered. The target of the trachea is the liver and kidneys. As long as the time is long enough, the liver and kidney functions in Doom's body will fail, thus achieving the purpose of eliminating Doom. In fact, there is no such thing as N-nitrosodimethylamine in Comartiki. But Strange can make do with what he has and extract and synthesize this substance from other items. But just when Strange was about to start, he found that Doom was very careful. In fact, the armor he wore had various functions. One of them was to check whether the food was poisonous. Strange still remembered that one day he saw Doom take out a thin metal rod from his armor and insert it into the water. Strange was very surprised, but Doom explained the reason for him. As a thorn in the eyes of the Western free world, there are always some mentally retarded Western radicals who want to harm me. So it's better to be safe than sorry. Chronic poisons are not easy to detect at the first time. So I have to be fully prepared at all times. Well, Strange's second plan also failed, and now Strange is powerless. There is a saying that goes, if you can't beat others, and you can't run away from others, then you have no choice but to join and surrender to others. Strange had no choice. He pushed open the door with a large bucket of clothes that needed to be washed and prepared to go to the sink to wash clothes. The moment Strange opened the door, he saw Li Ji and Wang. As the chief steward of Comartiki, Strange was very familiar with him, needless to say. But when he saw Nightwalker, whom he had only met for the second time, Strange was excited. Bang! The clothes that were originally prepared for washing were thrown to the ground by Strange. He grabbed Li Ji's shoulders tightly with both hands, and was as excited as if he had seen a relative. He said, "Please, take me away. I can't stay here for a second. Life in Comartiki is simply not a life for human beings. I will tell you everything, I admit everything. The terrorist attack launched in Chile was actually contacted by me. I am the mastermind behind the scenes. Please, arrest me and put me in jail." Oh. Strange said this emotionally. Li Ji was embarrassed, and Wang was even more embarrassed. As the chief steward of Comartiki, Wang was responsible for the normal operation of the entire Comartiki and the daily life of the mages and apprentices. Strange's words were simply a slap in the face of Wang in front of Nightwalker. This is criticizing Wang for not doing his job well. This is not okay, you are discrediting Comartiki. Wang was still very unhappy about Strange's words. Not only because Strange criticized him for not doing his job well, but more importantly, he actually wanted to run away? Exclamation mark. How can this be? Comartiki is a place where you can come and go as you please? You must know that you are a person favored by the Ancient One, the Abbot, Kof, the Supreme Sorcerer, and you still want to run away? Li Ji struggled to break free from Strange's hands and said awkwardly, "Well, Mr. Strange, I think you should not be too emotional. The terrorist attack in Chile was done by Hydra and has nothing to do with you. This joke is a bit too much. And you see, Comartiki is a beautiful place with outstanding people. You should study hard here. You can leave naturally after becoming an excellent wizard." After Li Ji broke free from Strange, he quickly stepped back several steps. Wang helped him stop Strange, who was a little excited. He dragged Strange back to the room and growled, "If you dare to embarrass Comartiki again, I will deal with you. Still want to run? Where do you want to run to?" Wang usually has the image of a very gentle and honest Asian man, but he is also very scary when he gets angry. As the chief steward of Kimartiki, Wang is also the chief instructor of fighting skills for the entire Kimartiki, and is the best person in Kimartiki in terms of fighting. Strange was carried back by him like a chicken. Wang didn't want Strange to embarrass Kimartaki in front of Nightcrawler. Because Wang knew that Master Lan and Nightcrawler had been very close recently, and maybe something would happen. Kimartaki is Lan's mother's home, and it would not look good if he made a fool of himself. So Wang was unusually strict with Strange now. Li Ji originally planned to talk to Strange or Doom before leaving, but Strange's current emotional state made it impossible for him to stay any longer. He could only hand the prepared Remy Martin cognac and cheese to Strange, and said hello to Doom, who had just appeared, before running away. Take Strange away? What a waste. Li Ji never thought of taking back the trouble he had thrown away. For example, now he was going to meet Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier. It was time to throw this trouble away. Li Ji had already thought about who to find to take over this trouble. Bucky Barnes' cell was simple but sturdy. This was the dungeon that Ancient One used to imprison demons who trespassed into the earth without permission. It was built with various materials that Li Ji didn't recognize at all, and it was deep underground in Kimartiki. The light source used to be candles, but now the Kimartiki has entered the era of electrification. 20W energy-saving lamps are installed everywhere. However, the wiring of the circuit is not very good, and it looks very messy. It is obviously not done by a professional electrician. Bucky Barnes was sitting blankly on the chair in the cell, and various newspapers were scattered around him, covering the ground. Wang pointed to the newspapers and said, "The drugs that control him seem to be about to lose their effectiveness. His memory is intermittent, sometimes he is awake and sometimes he is confused. But reading newspapers can calm him down, and after reading newspapers, his spirit seems to recover a little. So we bring him a lot of newspapers every day, which is a kind of rehabilitation treatment." Li Ji nodded. He agreed with this approach. The Winter Soldier's brain is controlled by drugs, and it takes time for the whole brain to recover. Reading text and pictures is a way to help the brain recover. It is good for the Winter Soldier. But just as Wang said, the Winter Soldier is sometimes clear and sometimes confused. For example, now is the time when he is confused. He sat in a chair blankly, staring straight ahead, and whispered in his mouth, "Who am I? Who am I? Who am I?" Li Ji listened carefully to Bucky's whisper. He felt that giving him a little stimulation at this time might help him recover faster. So Li Ji leaned against the railing and whispered, "You are Barn Bucky." Li Ji said the name seriously, but he seemed to have said it wrong. The name of the Winter Soldier is Bucky Barnes, not Barn Bucky. But Li Ji really can't remember the name of this unknown person. Although he has seen his name several times, he still pronounced it wrong at the last minute. But it's just that the pronunciation and spelling are reversed. Don't pay too much attention to such details. You see, Barn Bucky didn't care. Just after Li Ji said the name "You are Barn Barkus" seriously, the Winter Soldier was stunned for a moment. Although Li Ji's pronunciation was wrong, it still evoked Bucky's, or Barnes, memories. Many scattered memories hit his brain. Li Ji's words just now were like magic, constantly replaying in Barnes, Bucky's, mind. He kept chanting, "I am Barn Barkus, I am Barn Barkus, I am Barn Barkus." The Winter Soldier shouted the last sentence. Li Ji stood outside the prison and nodded with relief. It seemed that Barn Barkus' memory had been restored. It was all my credit, Li Ji thought with some pride. Of course, he didn't know that his wrong words just now changed the person's entire name. And he also changed the name of poor Bucky. From Bucky Barnes to Barn Barkus. Li Ji was going to have a good talk with Barn after he calmed down. Of course, he may not know how much difficulty Rogers and Bucky will have in communicating after you change his name without permission. So, if you are not familiar with someone, it is best not to pretend to be familiar with him, which will cause a lot of trouble to others. Chapter 740: A Sudden Crisis. By mistake, or under Li Ji's personal misleading, the former Winter Soldier, Captain America's good friend, and the anti-German hero during World War II, Sergeant Bucky Barnes happily accepted the setting of changing his name to Barn Barkus. And he shouted loudly, "I am Barn Barkus. I remember it, I remember it. A lot of fragmented memories are spinning in my mind. My head hurts." Poor Winter Soldier Bucky had a wrong name, which made his memory confused. Those memories that should have called him Bucky were forced to be changed to Barn. It's like suddenly adding a name modification script to a whole column of intact computer game program code, forcibly changing the name of the person who should be called NPC to the protagonist. This will make the whole game fall into logical confusion and unclear authority. Bucky is suffering from such logical confusion because his brain is forced to modify those memories. This is not as simple as changing the name of the computer hard disk folder. The memories that have been running through Bucky's mind for decades, those subconscious memories have been turned out and modified. It was like a computer reinstalling its system and redefining the user's username. Bucky rolled on the ground with his head in his hands, mumbling something. It was all fragmentary and old stories, such as who I killed, or the Battle of the Bulge during World War II. Sometimes it was about fighting with the 101st Airborne Division. Bucky was chanting some names, including members of the Howling Commandos and some other people. The only thing that remained unchanged was that he kept calling himself Barnes. He was subconsciously modifying his name so that his memory would become smooth. Although Bucky was rolling on the ground, Luigi thought it was a good thing. Because from the current situation, Barnes has begun to recover his memory. Of course, due to long-term drug control, there may be some pain in the recovery process, but this is also something that must be experienced. Luigi felt that he had done a good thing, and he made Barnes find himself again. Of course, Luigi didn't know how much pain Barnes would suffer if he said the name Bucky Barnes correctly. Now his brain is constantly shutting down and restarting, like a circle of bandages tightly wrapped around Bucky's brain, almost breaking his brain. Wang looked at Bucky rolling on the ground in pain, and he said with some concern, "He seems to be in a bit of pain. Do you need me to knock him out first? It doesn't seem good for him to toss and turn like this. It should be fine." This was the first time Luigi encountered such a situation, and he said uncertainly, "It seems that mental recovery is like this. You need to go through pain or something. Isn't it usually played like this in TV dramas and novels? I think we should believe in Barnes' willpower." If one day Bucky knew the origin of this matter, he would definitely be very grateful to Luigi for believing in his willpower. The Winter Soldier is always the Winter Soldier. It is not without reason that Bucky Barnes can survive the former Soviet Union's Super Soldier transformation. Compared with the Super Soldier transformation carried out by the United States, the Soviet Union's transformation experiment is as simple and crude as their T-34 tanks. Bucky, who can survive in such a terrible experimental environment, finally defeated the terrible memory modification and impact, and finally fainted with a hum. "Is he dead?" Wang asked Luigi uncertainly. This honest man was a little afraid that Bucky would die here, because he didn't want to bear the blame for the death of someone in Kamartaki's black prison. Luigi reached through the gap in the railing, touched Bucky's breath and said, "It seems that Barnes is very strong. He is not dead yet. He just fainted. But I don't know if his spirit is damaged. I don't know much about this." Wang was sweating coldly. "Since you don't understand, why did you let Bucky roll on the ground in pain just now, and said that this would help him recover his memory?" Wang suddenly felt that it might not be a good choice for Lan to follow this kid. He decided to speak to Master Gu Yi. Anyway, Lan had found the successor of the wizard, and now there were two people with potential. Then Lan should also return to Kamartaki. Staying with this kid might be disadvantageous at any time. Wang suddenly saw through Luigi's nature through Bucky's incident. This might also be a kind of ability of Wang. It is not simple to be a close servant beside the Supreme Wizard. Luigi looked at the unconscious Bucky and was a little unsure about his condition. Has he recovered his memory now? Or did he simply faint? In fact, Bucky did recover his memory, but because Luigi called his name wrong, he over-modified his memory. As a result, his brain became a little hot, just like a CPU overclocking, and almost burned out. Because of overusing his brain, the self-protection program inside Bucky's body was activated, causing him to fall into coma and sleep to protect himself. "Let's find a doctor to see him," Luigi said a little uncertainly. At the same time, he was muttering in his heart, "What's going on? Shouldn't he be very energetic after recovering his memory? I still have something to talk to you about. You are a little bit disrespectful." Wang opened his mouth and said after a long while, "Maybe we should have found a doctor for him a long time ago. Wait a minute, I'll go to the Union Hospital in BJ. There is a chief doctor I am very familiar with who specializes in brain department." "Why go to BJ?" Luigi quickly grabbed Wang. "No need to be so troublesome. Isn't there a very good doctor in Kamartaki?" "Who?" Wang didn't react at once. "Steve Strange." He is the world's top neurosurgeon and also has a lot of experience in neurosurgery. Isn't he here? Just go find him. Li Ji pulled Wang and prepared to find Strange. Wang was speechless. He wondered, just now you were hiding from Strange like a thief hiding from the police. Now aren't you afraid that he will grab your collar and ask you to arrest him and put him in jail? I was a little scared at first, but didn't you just say that someone favored by the Ancient One can still run away? The Ancient One wouldn't agree. So it's useless for him to grab my collar again. I believe you will help me block it. Li Ji said to Wang in a flattering tone. Wang had never felt that Li Ji was so annoying. He didn't feel that Li Ji's actions made him so unhappy before. Maybe it was because Lan vaguely expressed her affection for Li Ji after she came back last time, and Wang felt uncomfortable. Lan was adopted by the Ancient One when she was very young, but it was Wang who really took care of her from childhood to adulthood. So Wang's feelings towards Lan are very complicated. He is not only a martial arts master, but also plays a certain father role. So just now he really didn't want Strange to lose face for Kamartaki in front of Li Ji, because it was like losing face for Lan. But at the same time, he now feels very unhappy with Li Ji. He didn't care about some of the little things Li Ji did before, but he magnified them infinitely and picked faults with him. Just like the matter of Bucky. To be honest, a reformed mercenary with amnesia, this kind of person Wang never cared about. Especially this mercenary has committed so many murders and is an out-and-out terrorist. Although he is controlled by someone, this cannot cover up the fact that his hands are stained with the blood of innocent people. This kind of person usually dies, and Wang doesn't care at all. But Li Ji's behavior just now made him ignore Bucky's identity, just looking for the bad things about Li Ji and magnifying them. This made Wang very unhappy. So on the way to find Strange, Wang took a deep breath and looked at Li Ji and suddenly said, speaking of which, since Strange and Doom have come to Kamartaki, I think Lan should come back. I will go to New York with you to pick Lan up later. This was not a tone of negotiation, but a tone of affirmation. Wang wanted Lan to go to Kamartaki, and there was no room for tact. And this sentence was like a bolt from the blue for Li Ji. What? Exclamation mark. What happened? It was fine just now, why did he suddenly talk about this? Did Master Ancient One not ask about Lan's affairs and didn't let her come back? What's going on now? I and Lan have just made some progress. If we separate, all the previous efforts will be wasted. Li Ji's brain turned quickly, and he had to think of a way to let Lan stay. So he followed Wang silently and walked to the bathroom of Kamartaki. Strange was washing clothes there, 1/3 of which was his own and the other 2/3 were Doom's. When washing Doom's clothes, he used extra force, especially when using the clothes beater, he swung it with all his strength. It was as if the clothes in front of him were not Doom but clothes. The whole bathroom was filled with the sound of him beating clothes. Wang said, Strange, stop first, I need your help. Strange turned his head to look at Wang, and at the same time saw Nightwalker next to Wang. He was about to rush up again. Chapter 741 The Legendary Win-Win. Strange was helplessly washing his and Doom's dirty clothes in the bathroom, of course, mainly Doom's clothes. I don't know where Doom got his cleanliness from, he has to change clothes several times a day. Ugly people are more likely to do weird things. This is how Strange commented on Doom. Note, Doom's face was disfigured. Li Ji and Wang came back and asked Strange to stop what he was doing, because he needed his help. Strange looked up at Wang, and then at Nightwalker Li Ji. He rushed up and grabbed Nightwalker's sleeve, and his speed was amazing. This time Wang didn't stop him, which made Wang puzzled. Strange, I haven't taught Strange the skills of changing his movements and changing his shape, how come he can do it? Strange grabbed Nightwalker's sleeve and said excitedly, have you finally figured it out? Are you going to take me away? I told you that I did the thing in Chile, take me away quickly. What, Dr. Strange, let go first, let go, I told you to let go. Li Ji used a lot of strength to pull out the sleeve that Strange was holding. It seems that Strange is really scared of being bullied by Doom and can't stay in Kamartaki for a day. To be fair, Li Ji feels that if he and Strange swap positions and let Doom be his senior brother, then the result will definitely not be much better. Who wants to be a senior brother to think in his mind all day long, there are always villains who want to harm me. My things are mine, I won't give them to you, you are not allowed to snatch them. I want the whole world to remember my great achievements. These people with these broken ideas? Exclamation mark. In addition, although he had no in-depth contact, Li Ji also guessed that Doom must be an extremely terrible narcissist, which can be seen from the place names in Latveria. Who would put his name everywhere and name places at random, such as Doomberg, Doom Valley, Doomland, Doom Falls, etc.? It is not a pleasant experience to be with such a guy who has a little mental illness, is very strong, and has strong capital. Strange has figured it out. He has had enough of being oppressed by Doom every day. Even if he goes to jail for a year, it will not be worse than here. Strange thought very clearly that superheroes like Nightcrawler would not wrongly accuse others. As long as he escaped from this terrible place and stayed away from Doom, he would talk about it later when he arrived in New York or other places. He probably wouldn't really go to jail. The most he could do was to be beaten by Nightcrawler. It was just a beating, no big deal. Anyway, Strange was used to being beaten by Doom every day during training. At least his resistance to beatings has been greatly improved, and he has even begun to study some horizontal training kung fu that has been passed down in karateki. All fighting teachers, including Wang, think that Strange is talented in this aspect. Maybe he can follow the path of a hard-skinned wizard in the future. After finally breaking free from Strange, Li Ji shook his head and said, "Dr. Strange, I sympathize with your situation. But I don't have the final say in your affairs. And we have another patient who needs your attention. Can you do some business first?" Strange took a deep breath and whispered, "Okay, where's the patient?" This time, Wang didn't need to lead the way to the black prison, as Li Ji had already been there once. And Wang now said goodbye to Li Ji. He was going to report to Master Guyi and report Li Ji's bad deeds. Li Ji didn't expect that Wang, who looked honest, had so many twists and turns in his heart. And now he was more concerned about Barn, Bucky. Li Ji gestured to go this way, and asked Strange as he walked, "Do you really dislike karateki and learning spells?" Strange shook his head. "No, in fact, I like magic very much. I also like the early combat courses. Studying magicians is a magical thing. It broadens my horizons. Things that I used to think could be defined by science have different explanations here, which is very fascinating." Strange did not seem to be opposed to magic, but rather liked it a little. "I must admit that this kind of mystical thing has given me a great shock, but they have a unique charm. This cannot be ignored." "I like this." Li Ji asked curiously, "Then why do you always want to leave karateki?" Strange looked around to make sure that no one was eavesdropping, and then whispered, "No, I don't want to escape from karateki, but just want to escape from Doom. He is a very, very scary person. I think you should know this better than me." Li Ji did not agree with Strange's words, but he still held a positive opinion in his heart. Because Doom's horror does not need to be explained, even if he does not use any violent means. Just look at his cold iron mask and the monitor on the mask that flashes red all the year round to know how difficult this guy is to deal with. In anime or movies, this is definitely the appearance of the final big devil. So Strange said, "I just want to keep Doom away, the farther the better. Of course, this is not because I am afraid of Doom." Strange appropriately expressed his toughness, holding up. He did not want to be regarded as a coward by anyone. "It's just that I don't have the ability to deal with Doom now, so it's undoubtedly stupid to confront him head-on or do something similar. If I can change the environment to learn magic, I think I can learn faster. Because here Doom is always on guard against me, he seems to want to inherit the mantle of the Ancient One. He regards me as the biggest enemy." Strange said the crux of the problem. "So I want you to take me away. You brought me here, you can't just watch me die here. Superheroes can't take human life lightly. And the girl you were with that day. If I were killed by Doom here, it would be all your responsibility. Don't you feel guilty?" Strange complained as he followed Nightcrawler. Suddenly Nightcrawler stopped moving forward, turned around and said faintly, "Do you really want to leave karateki?" This tone made Strange feel a little uncomfortable, but he still said, "Stay away from Doom." Nightcrawler pondered for a moment and said, "Well, maybe you really shouldn't face Doom all the time. Such pressure is really terrible. If you are willing to continue to study magic, I think I can find a way to get you out." Strange's eyes lit up. "Where to?" Nightcrawler smiled. "Queens, New York." Well, Lan's problem and Strange's problem may be solved at once. Li Ji really doesn't want to be separated from Lan, so this time he may have to bring a trouble. But anyway, it's better than the worst situation. Strange laughed happily, and Li Ji laughed in his heart. This might be the legendary win-win situation. The two smiling people came to the black cell and saw the Winter Soldier lying on the cold floor. If the Winter Soldier could wake up and stand up now, he would definitely point at the two unsympathetic guys and curse. What do you think he would curse? P.S. It's the end of the month, please give me a monthly ticket. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 742 I Want to Meet Rogers. After Strange's examination, Winter Soldier Barn, Bucky, was fine. If this guy had been controlled by drugs before and his memory was modified, now it seems that his own recovery ability is correcting and repairing those damaged brain nerves. If the previous memory is replenished, it can be basically concluded that this guy is fine, at least he will not die. As for whether he will become an idiot or something, Strange dare not guarantee it. Because there is no large medical examination equipment that he is familiar with. So he has no way to do a very detailed and comprehensive examination of the Winter Soldier. However, when Strange was examining Barn, Bucky, he found that Barn, Bucky, showed signs of waking up. Leegee did not want too many people to know about the Winter Soldier, at least not before he confronted Tony and Captain Rogers. And now Strange did not know who he was examining, so it didn't matter if he let him see it. But if the conversation between Winter Soldier Bucky and Leegee was heard by Strange later, it would not be good. So Leegee politely asked Strange to go out and close the door. Strange followed suit and just reminded Leegee before he went out to close the door, "Don't forget to take me away later." Leegee waved his hand, indicating that he understood. Just over 10 minutes after Strange went out to close the door, Bucky finally woke up completely. Leegee had just thrown Bucky back on his bed, so Bucky was away from the cold stone slabs and had a warm bed under him. However, because the black cell was built underground, especially after so many years of being unused and almost abandoned. So although the bedding was new, it had also been stained with some moisture from the black cell these days. A faint musty smell filled Bucky's nose. He touched his brain that was about to split, and said in a half-struggling tone, "Damn Germans, how long have we been trapped in the Ardennes forest? Note, Rogers? But the quilt under me is still quite warm. Did you seize it from the Germans?" Bucky didn't want to open his eyes because of the severe headache. He now rests his head against his temples to make him feel better. He rolled over in bed and continued, "Damn it, should I get up? We have to find some food. Wolverine complained yesterday that he hasn't had enough to eat for a week. I found traces of a brown bear during my patrol. Bring along the dum-dum bullets and the British flag, and we'll bring the brown bear back so we can have a good meal. Then we'll try to break through the blockade." Leegee listened quietly to what Bucky said. It sounded like his memory had indeed recovered, but it was still a little confusing. Obviously, the time point of his memory now went back to 1944. The story of the Ardennes forest he told Leegee had been told by Captain Rogers. In fact, Steel Wolf, Wolverine, also mentioned it vaguely. Logan's memory had recovered about 1/3 to 1/2 when Leegee compiled a dream for him last time. However, for various reasons, he didn't want to have anything to do with Captain Rogers anymore. Leegee guessed that the biggest reason was that Logan now had a son and a daughter, and his life was no longer the bachelor's. He was a little afraid that Captain Rogers would call him to reorganize the Howling Commandos. Logan didn't want to be associated with the old life. He wanted a peaceful life and watched his children grow up. This is human nature, and there is nothing to force. So Logan always avoided Captain Rogers. Rogers actually knew that Professor X had an old partner of his own, but since he wanted to live a more peaceful life, Rogers had no reason to disturb him. From this point of view, Logan and Rogers have a tacit understanding. Some things are better left alone. From this point of view, Captain Rogers is actually a very gentle person. Although he has a dark and treacherous side, the gentle and kind side of his nature has always existed. Perhaps it was influenced by Captain Rogers, so Leegee was very hesitant when thinking about the problem of the Winter Soldier. If we follow the routines in some stories we have seen, Leegee should be decisive at this time, and it would be the safest to directly eliminate the unstable factor of the Winter Soldier. But Bucky the Winter Soldier is just a stranger to Leegee, but a close friend to Captain Rogers. Leegee had to consider Captain Rogers. If he really killed the Winter Soldier, how would he face Rogers in the future? So when it comes to the issue of dealing with a Winter Soldier, Lee Ji has been wavering. Although he doesn't want to say it, sometimes Lee Ji even has a thought in his mind that maybe it would be better if the Winter Soldier died directly, at least there wouldn't be so much trouble. It is this ambiguous attitude that makes him not decisive in dealing with a Winter Soldier. It is always in a state of wavering. So listening to the muttering of Bucky the Winter Soldier, Lee Ji took a deep breath. This conversation will determine his final attitude towards dealing with Bucky. So when Bucky was muttering about the Ardennes forest, Lee Ji interrupted. In December 1944, the Battle of the Bulge. Due to mistakes in the upper-level decision-making, the 101st Airborne Division and the 10th Armored Division were surrounded. The siege lasted for 35 days, and the 101st Airborne Division was almost out of ammunition and food. The Howling Commandos followed the 101st Airborne Division on this mission and were also surrounded. Hydra dispatched the well-equipped Black Helmets and Stormtroopers. It was required to completely annihilate the 101st Airborne Division and the 10th Armored Division. In order to break the blockade, Captain Rogers led the Howling Commandos to break through the Ardennes forest. The whole team almost collapsed because of lack of food and getting lost in the heavy snow. At this time, Sergeant Barnbachus, Bucky Barnes, found a hibernation cave of a brown bear, hunted the big bear and had a full meal. It was only after this that the whole team had the strength to break through the encirclement, contact General Patton on the periphery, and finally rescue the besieged 101st Airborne Division and the 10th Armored Division. In this battle, Sergeant Bucky received a Bronze Medal of Heroism as a commendation. Lee Ji lightly recounted this story he had heard countless times from Captain Rogers. Captain Rogers missed this battle very much, which witnessed the team spirit and honor of the Howling Commandos. And Captain Rogers' good memories of Bucky. Bucky was lying in bed, thinking that he was in the Battle of the Ardennes forest. But a strange voice suddenly came into his ears and told him something he had not experienced yet. This made Bucky ignore his headache and jump up. He saw a hooded weirdo standing in front of him, and he was not on the Ardennes forest camp as he thought, but in a dark prison. Bucky searched quickly, but he couldn't find his weapon after turning around. He clenched his fists and shouted at Lee Ji, "Who are you? What tricks are you playing, you German?" German. Lee Ji shook his head and said, "I'm not playing any tricks, Sergeant Bucky. You can stand here alive now thanks to your good friend Captain Rogers, otherwise I think you should have died long ago." Rogers? Rogers. What did you do to Rogers? Bucky seemed to have thought of something, and he shouted at Lee Ji. But he didn't dare to act rashly. Because this hooded weirdo just sitting there gave him a lot of pressure. It was as if he had suffered a loss at his hands before. But Bucky didn't remember seeing this person. Lee Ji sighed. "You now remember some things from the past, but have you forgotten what you have done in recent years? Winter Soldier, look at your left arm." At Lee Ji's reminder, Bucky took a look at his left arm. The muscular arm that should have been in his memory was now replaced by an arm of steel. "What's going on? What's going on?" Bucky looked at his arm in horror and shouted. Everything now was a little beyond his expectations. "What are you doing? Are you from Hydra?" Lee Ji shook his head and said, "Sergeant to be precise, I saved your life. Because I don't want you to cause irreversible damage to the world. But I don't want to see Captain Rogers sad. He is a good man. He just lost a loved one recently, and I don't want him to lose a close friend. But your existence is too dangerous. I think you still remember the newspaper you read this morning." Lee Ji pointed to the newspapers scattered all over the room. Bucky drew all the information about Rogers with charcoal pencils and spread all over the floor. That was something he did subconsciously when his memory had not yet recovered. He felt that the man in the newspaper must be related to him. Now Lee Ji pointed to the photo of Rogers in the newspaper, which was like a key connecting all of Bucky's memories. He was stunned. Lee Ji stood up and said, "If you remember anything, just speak up, Sergeant. You are a hero of World War II, and I am grateful for everything you have done for this world. But you have also done a lot of bad things, although this was not your intention. So I will lock you up here temporarily. And now, if you are awake, we should talk about how to deal with your follow-up matters." Lee Ji exhaled heavily from his nose, and the sound of his snort interrupted Bucky's memories. His brain was very confused. Sometimes it was Bucky, and sometimes it was the Winter Soldier. It seemed like a dream, and he couldn't tell the truth from the false in some things. His head hurt even more now, and he buried his head in his knees. The pain in his brain made him roar like a beast. "I want to see Rogers. Chapter 743 Need to take responsibility. I want to see Captain Rogers. This was Bucky's request, but Lee answered almost without thinking, no. At least not now. Yes, maybe Bucky can go to see Rogers in the future. But at least not now. Because this is not only about the story of Bucky and Rogers, a pair of good friends. It also involves the murder of Tony's parents. Although Lee has secretly judged that Tony's parents may not be his biological parents. But this cannot change Tony's feelings for them. The grace of raising is not as great as the grace of giving birth. This sentence is not just a saying. Although Howard didn't seem to have a good relationship with Tony when he was alive, and Tony was also very rebellious. But Howard always cared about Tony and even left a plan to replace Palladium. The confrontation between Tony and Howard back then was more like a kid who didn't pay attention to discipline wanted to prove his ability in front of his parents. It was as if he was saying, I don't have to follow the rules to do better than others. The death of the Howards was the biggest blow to Tony. It was also from then on that Tony lived an indulgent life for 2 years, anesthetizing himself with alcohol and women. Although Tony recovered later, many habits could not be changed. Lee heard from Pepper that when she just became Tony's secretary, Tony still had a serious alcohol addiction. Alcoholism was almost something Tony had to do every day. Even if he didn't drink, he would have no strength for the whole day. Pepper spent a year and a half managing and controlling Tony's life, and finally spent another half a year to help Tony recuperate. It took a total of 2 years to rescue Tony from the abyss of alcohol dependence. From then on, Pepper was not only Tony's secretary at work, but also his all-round housekeeper. If there's anyone in the world who can control Tony with just a few words, then this person must be Pepper. So it is not difficult to see from these things how much impact the death of the Howards had on Tony. It can even be said that Tony's current personality and style of doing things are largely due to the changes brought about by the death of his parents. This affected Tony's entire life, and now the culprit who caused Tony's entire life to change, and even seriously derailed his life for a period of time, is standing in front of Lee. He asked to meet Captain Rogers. Would Lee agree? Or dare to agree? If Bucky met Captain Rogers now, then the next work would be difficult to carry out. No, Sergeant. If the memory in your brain is still clear, you should understand what you have done all these years. To put it bluntly, you are a terrorist who should be executed in secret. At least if it is not made public, you can still retain your honor in World War II. Your statue can also be displayed in the museum with other members of the Howling Commandos for people to admire and worship. Lee's words were very naked. Bucky had a splitting headache, and a tide of information washed over his brain, becoming clearer and stronger. At first, he thought that the hooded man in front of him had injected him with some psychiatric drugs. But later, he began to gradually realize that those memories were not fictitious. They were real. He still clearly remembered the howling and struggling of the innocent people he killed before they died. There were also several terrorist attacks launched in Eastern Europe, the flames and explosions that shot into the sky, and the crowds of people running helplessly for help and howling in the bus station. Did you do all this yourself? That's impossible. I won't do these things. My belief is to end wars and conflicts, not to create them. Bucky suddenly stood up, rushed to Lee, and waved his metal arm to hit Lee. But before his arm touched Lee kicked Bucky in the face and sent him flying. Watch your behavior, I told you, Sergeant Barn. Bucky, if it weren't for Captain Rogers, you should have died a long time ago. In every sense. Lee was a little dissatisfied with Bucky's behavior of punching him just now. Bucky's mouth was bleeding, which was caused by Lee's kick just now. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. What did you do to me? He still didn't want to admit the cruel reality in his memory. Lee knew Bucky's thoughts very well, so he took out the tablet computer that he had prepared long ago from his belt and opened the videos in it. Most of them were documentaries and news clips downloaded by Lee. The documentaries were about Rogers and his Howling Commandos, and there were quite a few of them. There are also some news clips that Lee can find, which can be roughly speculated to be the terrorist attacks carried out by the Winter Soldier during the period of great changes in Eastern Europe. Lee did not speak, but just let the video on the tablet play. Bucky couldn't take his attention away after taking a look. Especially those news clips, many things overlapped with the memories in his brain. This process lasted for more than 3 hours, and Lee put it away when the tablet, which originally had a low battery, began to show that the battery was low. So, Sergeant Barn, Bucky. Have you thought it through now? Lee said to Bucky, who buried his head. Bucky covered his face with his hands and said in a somewhat weak tone, I did all this? All of it. Some are, and some may not be. I can't find all the information, and I can't conclude that all things are related to you. Lee answered truthfully. Bucky raised his head, and Lee noticed that his eyes were red. Bucky said weakly, but I have those memories in my mind. I even remember the structure of the bomb installed in Kiev. The news said that the explosion killed at least 50 people and injured hundreds of people. And they were all civilians. The huge psychological shock and guilt almost broke Bucky. That's why I said that if it weren't for your relationship with the captain, you should have died long ago. Lee's face jumped, but he still made himself say such cold words. If you have read the New York newspapers for more than a month, I think you should know who I am. Although my news is not as good as Captain Rogers, I will occasionally have some. Bucky stared at Lee, and his originally chaotic memory began to review all the news he had seen in the past few months. He said, Your name is Nightwalker? The underground superhero in New York. Yes, it seems that you are completely normal now. Then we need to talk about how to deal with you. Lee breathed a sigh of relief. Until now, Bucky has been completely normal. In this way, they can communicate normally. The corner of Bucky's mouth twitched, so I am in prison now. Bucky looked around. This is the black prison where Kamartaji holds the illegally invading demons. So it does look a bit like a prison. So, am I going to be sentenced to life imprisonment or death? Why didn't the warden come? If I want the death penalty, I don't want to sit in the electric chair, anything else is fine. Bucky suddenly said these things very calmly, about how he should die. Lee looked at him in surprise. Don't you want to argue? Bucky smiled bitterly. Guilty people should not expect to escape their guilt. What has been done is done, and I am willing to accept my punishment. You are right, I am indeed not suitable to meet Rogers now. Especially after he has been frozen for so many years and returned again, he has also become the leader of the SWRD and the Avengers. Note, the information that Bucky learned from the newspaper, now he has sorted out his thoughts. Lee raised his eyebrows. Well, it seems that dealing with Bucky's problem will not be too difficult. At least he is a person who is willing to admit responsibility. Chapter 744, Keeping Up Head is Troublesome. No, you won't betray the death penalty. Lee sat back on the stool and said to Bucky, I won't let this happen. At least not now. Why? Bucky looked at Lee and asked, in various ways, there is nothing wrong with sentencing me to death. A person who does something wrong needs to pay the price for his actions. Whether I am willing to do it or not, I have committed these things. You don't need to sympathize with me, and this has nothing to do with morality. Lee held his chin with one hand and looked at Bucky. I'm sorry, Sergeant, your inability to die has nothing to do with morality or whether I sympathize with you or not. In fact, you and I are just strangers. I don't have to sympathize with the things you have done. To tell you the truth, even if you die in front of me, my heart will not be the slightest bit shaken. Because I am not familiar with you at all, and you have indeed done a lot of bad things. The only reason you can't die is Rogers. He definitely doesn't want to see you die. And this is the only reason you are alive now. I have emphasized this before. Rogers doesn't want you to die, so at least you can't die in my hands. Otherwise, I won't be able to face Captain Rogers in the future. He and I are friends. Lee made it clear why he didn't kill Bucky. It had nothing to do with morality, law, or sympathy. It was simply because Lee knew how important Bucky, as a friend, was to Rogers. Rogers got drunk once after Agent Peggy died. That happened at the Venus base, and that was the only time Lee and other Illuminati members, including Tony, saw Captain Rogers lose his composure. With a physique transformed by the super soldier, it was not an exaggeration for Rogers to say that he could drink 1,000 cups without getting drunk. This shows how much he drank that day. Captain Rogers drank all the dozens of bottles of strong brandy that Tony had secretly stored at the base. And after getting drunk that time, Captain Rogers talked a lot, more than usual. There are stories about him and Agent Peggy falling in love, and some things about missing old friends. For example, he missed Barn, Bucky. He mentioned more than once how much help Barn, Bucky, gave him when he wanted to become a painter. Including taking him to eavesdrop on the teacher's lectures in the studio, and the two of them went together to refurbish other people's discarded old paintbrushes. Barn, Bucky was even willing to use the money he saved for marriage to support Rogers so that he could enter the Academy of Fine Arts for formal studies. Not to mention the kind of life and death friendship on the battlefield. Lee has no moral burden in solving Bucky. The biggest burden is that he may never dare to look Captain Rogers in the eyes and speak again. This heavy burden even exceeds the law and morality to a certain extent. So this is why Lee must urgently and even a little hastily solve the problem of the Winter Soldier. Lee continued, "You have read so many newspapers, you should know Captain Rogers' current status? He is the leader of SWORD and the leader of the Avengers. He has a great reputation in the United States. I am not surprised that he will become the President of the United States in more than a year." Bucky was silent for a while and said, "Yes, you are right. So publicly executing me will even be the biggest stain in Rogers' life? If you are his friend, are you here to help him solve my problem?" Lee heard a kind of depression in Bucky's tone. Lee looked at Bucky's heavy face and said, "My search for you has nothing to do with Rogers. He doesn't even know you exist. Besides, you died in the wilderness more than 70 years ago. This is my personal behavior." Bucky seemed to be in a much better spirit after hearing what Lee said. But what Lee said next was another major blow to him. "And the reason I'm looking for you and want to deal with your problem is not as simple or dirty as you guessed." Lee pointed to a newspaper on the ground. In the upper left corner of the newspaper was printed news about the Stark Group. "Do you know this group and the leader of this group?" Bucky recalled the newspapers he had read for so long and nodded. "Stark Group, the world's most important technology group, weapons and equipment, heavy machinery, smart products, and the world's unique new energy and cosmeceuticals products. The leader is Tony Stark." Lee nodded. "Yes, Tony Stark is not only the leader of this group. He is also the scientific advisor of the Avengers and SWORD. He is also a good friend of Captain Rogers. He and Captain Rogers both have tremendous power and resources in the modern world. And you killed Tony Stark's parents." Lee said something that made Bucky's heart beat slower. He almost subconsciously said, "What? Impossible." Lee nodded. "This is true. Before and after the collapse of the Soviet Union, you carried out a mission. It was to assassinate Howard Stark and his wife. And because of this incident, you will now be the key point to trigger the conflict between the two." Lee's words made Bucky's memory flash back. He remembered the matter about Howard Stark and his wife. It was indeed done by him. Bucky opened his mouth but couldn't say a word. That's why I found you. What you did cannot be exposed by others, which will cause unpredictable consequences. Captain Rogers just lost Peggy. For him, if he knew you were still alive, he would try his best to save you. Although the captain has always been very rational, sometimes his inner emotions will overwhelm his rationality. Lee's tone was not very good. And for Tony Stark, you killed his parents and changed his entire life trajectory. If he knew who did it, he would definitely find you and tear you into pieces, and no one could stop it. And this created a conflict between Captain and Iron Man, and it is difficult to reconcile." Lee looked at Bucky and said, "To put it bluntly, Bucky, we can't let your relationship lead to conflict between the two of them, or even a civil war. This is not good for the world at all." Bucky covered his forehead. He couldn't speak anymore. After a long while, he said, "So you want me to be locked up here for life? Never show up in public again?" Lee shook his head. "The truth will come out. Since you are still alive, the secret will be revealed one day. So I can only reveal this to the two of them. I don't want them to cause any friction. This is not good for Rogers, Tony, you, or me." Now, except for nodding, Bucky didn't know what to say. "So, I just want to ask for your opinion, Bucky. Are you willing to take responsibility for what you did in the past? Even if it costs a lot?" Lee asked very seriously. Bucky took a deep breath. "I never evade my responsibility." Lee nodded, then walked out of the black cell and said, "I will arrange for you to meet Captain Rogers. It won't take too long." Looking at the back of Nightwalker going away, Bucky shouted at him, "Thank you. What you did for me." Lee paused for a moment, but said without looking back, "I didn't do these things for you. Remember your promise. Maybe you will need to go through fire and water in the future." Lee waved his hand and left the black cell. Looking at the mountains decorated with snow in the distance of Kamartaki, Lee patted his cheek. "Well, the first step of dealing with the Winter Soldier is over. Next, it's time to confront Rogers and Tony." Lee feels a little heavy. This kind of thing is very stressful, and Li Ji wants to find a place to stay quietly for a while. But before he could find a suitable place, Strange came out from nowhere. What? Can Hyundai take me away? Strange asked with a smile. Li Ji saw a hint of flattery in his smile, which was a bit like the expression of samoyeds before eating canned dog food in the cute pet videos on the internet. Li Ji patted his forehead. Okay. He still needed to solve the problems between himself and Lan, and rescue Strange by the way. We already have an Alaskan at home. It would be really troublesome to raise another samoyed. Especially if there are conflicts between the Alaskan and samoyed. Li Ji muttered to himself. Strange was confused when he heard Li Ji's words, but he still smiled politely and asked, "Are you saying that there are pets in the place where I will go in the future? In fact, I don't mind having pet dogs where I live, as long as they don't bark in the middle of the night." Li Ji looked at Strange and responded to his smile. Chapter 745 Sign a contract with me. Why should we help Strange leave Kamartaki? The reason is very simple, because dealing with Strange's affairs is actually helping Li Ji solve his own problems. The Grand Steward of Kamartaki has said that he will suggest Lan to return to Kamartaki to continue his studies, so that Lan can stay away from New York, especially from Li Ji. This is not good news for Li Ji, and he needs to find an excuse to let Lan stay. It is better to be a good excuse that cannot be refused. At this time, the appearance of Strange gave Li Ji a flash of inspiration. Strange is talented, and Guyi saw that he has the ability to become an excellent wizard. He and Doom both have the opportunity to inherit Guyi's mantle and become the supreme sorcerer. This makes Strange's importance still very high. However, Doom obviously regards Strange as a competitor, and he is determined to win the position of the supreme sorcerer. In fact, Doom has many paranoid aspects in his character. Just like playing chess, you must win, otherwise he will not allow the other party to leave. You must win the gold medal in the sports meeting, and getting the silver medal is a failure. So for the position of Supreme Sorcerer, it is not that Doom wants it so much, but he absolutely cannot lose. That's all. So Strange became his competitor, and Doom never showed mercy to his competitors. He naturally used methods such as exclusion, suppression, and bullying. And he used them very cleverly, at least Wang did not see it. Instead, he thought that appropriate friction could increase the relationship between brothers. Of course, as a victim, Strange certainly did not think so. If possible, he would probably want to stay as far away from Doom as possible. Just like now, he and Li Ji stood in front of Master Ancient One and expressed their attitudes. Respected Master Ancient One, it's not because I want to escape from the practice of learning magic. In fact, I am very obsessed with magic. I like these mystical things very much, this is true. But I don't think I can stay here forever. Strange stood beside Li Ji and said righteously, in fact, when this night walker and his companions brought me, I was doing Doctors Without Borders activities. I am an excellent doctor, and my ambition is to help people all over the world get rid of illness. I have been doing this for so many years. Strange said it sincerely, as if it was true. Ancient One sat on the stage and listened to Strange's speech, with an expression of non-committal on his face. Strange continued, for me, practicing magic is a wonderful experience. It makes my life sublime and joyful. But every time when it's late at night, I always think, I can live a happy life here, but what about those patients who are suffering from illness? I'm not bragging, because I don't disrespect other doctors. There are many surgeries in this world, especially neurosurgery, which only I can perform. Strange said this with full confidence. Every time I think of these things, my heart is tormented. I should stand in front of the operating table with a scalpel to treat and save people. I can't let those innocent patients who are suffering die in torment because of my personal preference. This is unfair to them. I can't waste the medical skills I have practiced for so many years like this. They still need to be used in the filming. Strange's long speech was full of emotion, and Li Ji couldn't help but applaud him in his heart. Li Ji's inner OS, Strange is simply a natural actor. Whether it is a mean businessman, a studious student, or a compassionate doctor, his acting is flawless. Li Ji was almost convinced. He just colluded with him at the last minute to talk about the lines, but he didn't expect Strange's performance to be so perfect, without any flaws. The Ancient One listened to Strange's speech calmly, and then said, So, Strange, what do you want to say? Quit Kamartaki and continue to be your doctor. Strange stepped forward and replied, I want to continue my practice on the journey of magic. I may be able to learn part of it by myself, although the progress will be a bit slow. Then I can come to Kamartaki through the New York Temple on weekends. This is like a part-time community college, or an adult university. In this way, I can balance my obligations as a doctor and learn magic. This way I won't delay either side. Strange said this plan. If this is really the case, it is obvious that his future life will be very tiring. But it doesn't matter if you are a little tired, it's better than staying with doom. Master Ancient One also realized this and said, but this way your study and work intensity is too high, and you may get half the result with twice the effort. At this time, Li Ji stood up and interrupted, actually, there is a good way, Master Ancient One. Ancient One glanced at Li Ji and asked with some interest, what method? Isn't Lan living with me now? I think it should be no problem for Lan to teach Strange with his level. At least his current level is not high enough that you must teach him in person. I heard that even Wang doesn't guide him all the time. He still has a lot to learn. I think Lan should be able to help Strange solve most of his questions. Li Ji carefully proposed his own solution, and he looked at Master Ancient One. Well, I can't see the expression of the wizard. After a while, Master Ancient One said, it sounds good. Li Ji always felt that there seemed to be something in Master Ancient One's words. Actually, I know Strange. You don't seem to get along very well with Doom. Master Ancient One stood up and paced, this is normal. Doom is more ambitious and enterprising. Although you are also very motivated, you lack his ferocity. From a certain perspective, this is an advantage, but from another perspective it may be a disadvantage. So I have been thinking about this matter, how to let you study well. I have thought about handing you over to the wizards of the New York Temple for teaching, or letting you go to Hong Kong. Of course, I have also thought about letting Lan teach you. These three methods are all good, but now that the two of you have discussed it and proposed the last method, then do what you think. Master Ancient One said with a smile, in fact, since Nightwalker has put forward this good idea, then I think I don't need to convince Wang. I don't have to listen to him nagging in my ear all day that Lan should be brought back. Master Ancient One shook his head, when children grow up, they should be allowed to fly instead of being trapped in cages, right? You have prepared a good excuse for me. When Ancient One said this, he looked at Li Ji. This plan was clearly proposed by himself, but why did he seem to be fooled for no reason? Is this the legendary waiting for the rabbit by the tree? Li Ji opened his mouth but didn't know what to say. Until he left, he heard the advice of Master Gu Yi, next time you come to Kamartaki, remember to stay away from Wang Yuan. He can easily summon hundreds of close mages, you can't beat him. Li Ji stumbled and almost fell to the ground, my god. Is Master Guya going to push everything on his head? Li Ji looked around, good, Wang is not here now. He pulled Strange and ran quickly, and said as he ran, you need to sign a contract with me later. What? Is it a rental contract? Strange asked, following Li Ji's steps. No. It's a contract with your soul. You need to keep everything you see and hear confidential, otherwise your soul will suffer the pain of burning in the fire. Li Ji answered quickly. What? What terrible things are you going to do with me? Strange stopped and did not run away with Li Ji. He felt like he had been fooled. Just like when Li Ji faced Ancient One just now. Li Ji stopped and looked at Strange and said seriously, actually, signing this contract is for your health. Huh? Strange was getting more and more confused, what and what? Can you explain clearly what you want to do? I can't sell my soul to the devil at will. Li Ji waved his hand, it's not that serious. It's just a strict confidentiality agreement. You can't reveal my true identity, keep your mouth shut. And everything you see needs to be kept confidential. Strange asked, that's it? Li Ji nodded, yes, that's it. Oh. One more thing, I will introduce you to your new roommate later. So hurry up and sign the contract with me, Strange. This chapter has a big mistake, and chapter 184 was typed as chapter 194. And I don't have the authority to modify it. The editor will be on vacation from today to the National Day. So I have no choice. Oh. Chapter 746 New Roommate. The small villa that Li Ji rented was not very big. The layout of the first floor was the living room, dining room, kitchen, utility room and toilet. The main living space was concentrated on the second floor. There were 5 rooms on the second floor. 1 for Li Ji and 1 for Lan. Peter also moved in after going to college, So he also needed one. One was for Thor. So in theory, there should be one room left. But because of the descent of Sif, the Valkyrie of Asgard, this room was given to her. So Strange actually had no private room. Leegi asked Strange, otherwise how about he just live in his big house in Manhattan? Strange refused, because he had already said before he left that he wanted to take a journey to cleanse his soul. As a result, if he went back before the time came, wouldn't he be slapped in the face? Strange was also a face-saving person. Most people in the community where he lived knew him, and he couldn't go back like this. Otherwise, who knows how many jokes about him will be spread in the upper class in the future, and Strange can't accept such things. So living in Queens, and in this area near Flushing, is good. Because the place where Leegi lives is a gathering place for Asians. The security conditions are much better than those where African Americans or Latin Americans gather. In terms of crime rate, it is no different from the middle-class communities with excellent security for white people. And because this is a community where ethnic minorities account for the majority, the friends and colleagues that Strange knows basically don't come here. In this way, there is no need to worry about Strange being seen by them. Then the most important point is that Strange doesn't really want to rely entirely on himself to learn magic. Please, only fools would do this, okay? Magic is something that requires talent, but it is also very rigorous. A wrong syllable in the casting of a spell can make the wizard doomed. There are wizards in Kamartaki who have no noses or walk crookedly. These are all problems when they cast spells. The only standard for ordinary wizards to graduate is that after learning to release all basic magic, the body is still intact and has no lesions. This is considered to have passed the junior wizard exam. Strange didn't want his handsome nose to disappear, or his face to be stretched into a horse face. This was something he couldn't accept. So he hoped to continue his studies to explore the mysteries of magic, and have an experienced guide. He had heard of the name of Master Lan, who was the youngest genius girl in Kamartaki, but whose strength was comparable to that of the three great temple wizards. A wizard of this level was more than enough to teach him. So Strange asked to live with Leegi, because only in this way could he find Lan and get answers as soon as he had any questions about magic. Leegi didn't comment, he just asked Strange to sign a soul contract with him. After the soul contract was signed, Leegi ensured that Strange would not reveal his secrets. Leegi took off his disguise, smiled and stretched out his hand to Strange and said, "Then we need to meet again, Dr. Strange." Strange was a little surprised, and it took him a long time to react. Because he actually knew the famous New York superhero Nightcrawler. He said in disbelief, "I didn't expect it to be you, Mr. Lee. I thought you were just an excellent businessman and gourmet." Leegi shrugged, that is indeed my real identity. You can treat Nightcrawler as a spice of life." Leegi's words made Strange hard to tell the truth from the false. Leegi continued, "Since you have signed a soul contract with me, I will not hide many things from you. You can know a little about what you are about to face." Strange looked very relaxed. Because he escaped from Doom's range, he didn't have to worry about being bullied by Doom every day. And since Mr. Nightcrawler also knew him, his future life should not be very sad. Leegi took out a shrunken food cart from his belt, enlarged the food cart, and motioned Strange to sit on the food cart. Strange looked a little weird, but he still did it. Leegi used the food cart to break the door of time and space and went directly back to his basement. Then he walked up with Strange, saying as he walked, "You may have to live here for a while in the future." Compared with Strange's tasteful big house, Leegi's small villa seemed much older and outdated. But it was much better than Kamartaki. So Strange was still a little happy. At least there was a fully automatic washing machine here, so he didn't have to wash clothes by hand. He said excitedly, "So where will I live in the future? It looks like there should be more rooms here." Leegi touched his chin and said in a measured tone, "Originally there should be. But I have some tenants here. I think you should know Lan." When Leegi said this, Lan just felt the surge of magic in the basement. She was walking out of the room with a thick book in her arms. She looked unkempt with her hair disheveled, and she was wearing a pair of Totoro-shaped cotton slippers on her feet. "Lan." Leegi shook his head at Lan, indicating that there was another stranger here. Lan muttered to Leegi and then went back to her room. Leegi didn't hear what she said clearly. Leegi shrugged, "She will be your teacher in the future. You don't have any problem, do you?" I think so. Is this little girl really the female wizard I saw that day?" Strange was a little skeptical. "And there is also a New York University student living here. He is my good friend. Recently he is doing a very important biological research. There is a sign on his door that says no entry. You can't touch anything inside. I need you to abide by this. Strange frowned. Well, how great can a college student's project be? Maybe it's a graduation project? Anyway, just don't touch it. Just when Strange was thinking this, there was a sound of banging in the stairwell. A boy who looked small and very young rushed out of the stairwell. Damn it, damn it. I overslept. I'm not going to catch up with Professor Finn's class. I don't want to fail in my first year. Peter Parker rushed out from upstairs like the wind. Hi G. Can you lend me your car? Luigi threw the car keys to Peter and told him, drive carefully. Peter returned a reassuring gesture and waved to the stranger Strange as a greeting. A reckless guy, this is Strange's first impression of Peter Parker. Just as he was thinking this, there was a loud noise in the kitchen. What the hell? Is it a gas explosion? We have to evacuate here quickly. Strange was a little flustered. Luigi grabbed him and shouted in the direction of the kitchen, Sif. If you try to cook any non-Earth ingredients and use any non-Earth cooking methods in my kitchen, I will ask you to return to Asgard. Say goodbye to your beloved Thor. After a long while, the noise in the kitchen became smaller. A heroic female voice came over, okay. I will try to use an electric oven to make barbecue next time. I will not use the elves' fire scrolls anymore. Luigi helplessly held his forehead. Strange opened his mouth wide. Oh my god, are all the people in this room so crazy? The only one who seems normal now is Luigi in front of him. Wait, Strange suddenly noticed the name Luigi just said, and asked with some doubt, who is the Thor you just mentioned? Is it the person I think of? Luigi nodded, yes. We are short of rooms now, you probably need to live in the same room with Thor. And that Thor is indeed the one you think of. Just when Luigi and Strange were talking, the door of the room was opened. Thor walked in happily, holding 2 big bags and said, today is the day to get my salary. I went to the Chinese supermarket to buy the ingredients. How about we have hot pot tonight? Luigi clapped his hands, that's great. Let's buy some beer, Thor. It's a good opportunity to welcome your new roommate. I think you two need to get along well in the future. Luigi introduced Thor and Strange to each other. Thor, Strange. I think you should know each other. Strange took a deep breath to suppress his emotions. He said in a heavy voice, yes, I do know him. Chapter 747 Failed Orientation Party. The atmosphere in the restaurant of Luigi's small villa was awkward. The seats at the 6-person table were all occupied. A copper-bottomed double-flavored pot was placed on an induction cooker in the middle. There was half white soup and half red soup, beef shank, beef brisket, lamb tenderloin, eggs, egg dumplings, and bacon-wrapped enoki mushrooms. There were also fish balls, shrimp balls, sea hares, and octopus feet. In addition, there were cabbages, lettuce, mushrooms, and so on. The ingredients were rich, but no one picked up their chopsticks. The scene was a little awkward, mainly because of the stares between Strange and Thor. An awkward atmosphere surrounded them. Luigi opened a can of Coke and poured a glass for Thor and Strange. Come on, you will be good roommates from now on. You must learn to help and take care of each other. After drinking this glass of Coke, we will all be family. Neither of them touched the Coke in front of them. Thor turned his head and said to Luigi, I am so big, do you think it is okay to let such a slender doctor squeeze into the same room with me? What if I accidentally break his finger? How can he perform surgery in the future? Thor's eyes were sparkling. He didn't like Strange. He didn't feel good when he met Strange several times. Especially after refusing Penny's surgery, Thor disliked Strange even more. Note, Strange participated in the last surgery in secret, and he did not disclose it. After Strange left, Thor heard some rumors. As for why he was suspended from the emergency team to the welfare home, one of them was that Strange was obstructing it. Although Thor didn't hate it, he even said that he liked working in the welfare home now. But Thor still didn't like this way of using power to transfer his position. Especially when he heard that this matter was caused by Christine, Thor despised Strange even more. A sinister villain who only knows how to use despicable means. This is Thor's evaluation of Strange. Strange looked at the Coke in front of him that was still bubbling, and snorted, Slim? I'm afraid I can beat 10 of you now. Strange has received so much magic training for so long, and his fighting skills have improved rapidly. Especially with a capable senior brother as an opponent, and he beats him hard every time, which makes his progress particularly fast. Strange is now confident that he can deal with a dozen ordinary strong men. Without magic, he feels that he can defeat Thor with just his fists. Of course, he still doesn't know Thor's other identity. Hearing Strange say this, Thor stood up on the spot. Huh. Then let's try it. I'll let you use both hands. Are the mages of Kamartaki so arrogant now? Lan immediately shook her head to indicate that this was Strange's personal behavior and had nothing to do with Kamartaki. Liji pulled Sif and whispered, "Why don't you stop Thor?" Sif waved her hand. "Why should I stop him? In Asgard, this is the way men communicate with each other. Wrestling and fighting. The more you fight, the deeper the friendship." Puff. Liji didn't like this kind of place where men communicated with each other through wrestling. The soup of the hot pot was boiling. Peter Parker ignored the two men who were about to fight. He just put all kinds of meat and vegetables into the white soup pot. When the beef was cooked, he immediately picked it up and ate it. He ate very quickly and loudly. Everyone's attention was drawn to that place. Peter looked at everyone and took another bite of beef. "You guys continue. Do what you need to do. I'm just too busy lately and a little hungry. You can continue to communicate your feelings, wrestling and fighting. Don't worry about me. I won't wrestle with men." Tun ha. Peter choked because he ate the beef too quickly. He took a big sip of Coke and burped. Well, no one at home is reliable. Liji couldn't help but think, why are the people living in my place so unruly? They weren't such people before. Who did they learn bad things from? Exclamation mark. If I find the person who taught us bad things, I will definitely teach him a lesson. Liji shook his head and could only stand up to separate the two men whose faces were about to come together. Gentlemen, pay attention to your manners. Your behavior looks like you are going to kiss, not to fight. This has a bad influence. There are ladies and children here. Liji pointed at Lan and Sif, and the child pointed at Peter, who looked like an underage middle school student. Peter, hey. Lan shook her head and said, "It's okay. Actually, I've seen it, haven't I? You and Thor." She told Liji and Thor what happened before very frankly. Liji, hey. Sif was very interested and came to Lan's side, whispering to her, "What happened at that time?" Lan responded to Sif and whispered to her, "I'm telling you." Liji, hey. Lan, hey, keep your voice down. It's disturbing our conversation. Liji. Strange glanced at Liji and Thor, and then at Peter who was eating meat. Peter noticed Strange's gaze. "Don't look at me, I didn't kiss them. That was a medical exercise. Not kissing." Liji was a little hysterical and wanted to run away. Peter pouted, "Okay, whatever it is. You didn't refuse at that time, did you?" Liji, where did the innocent Spider-Man go? Exclamation mark. I want to find the person who taught the little spider bad things, and then cut him into pieces. Strange had already taken several steps back when Liji and Thor were not paying attention. Liji suspected that he would reach the corner if he took one step back. Strange deeply felt that his escape from Kamartaki might be a mistake. It was a serious mistake. This house, everyone here seemed abnormal. He felt that he needed to make a statement. First, I support the Rainbow Act. Secondly, I personally prefer women. Damn it. It would be better to stay in Kamartaki and share a room with Doom. Although Doom would beat him every day, at least Strange didn't have to worry about other problems. Liji forced Thor back to his seat and said, "Strange, Thor. I don't care how many conflicts and problems you had before, find a way to solve it. Then Strange, you have signed a soul contract with me. Don't be picky about me. You can live in the same room with Thor, or sleep in the basement, okay?" Strange quickly replied, "Okay, I'll live in the basement." Huh? Exclamation mark. Double monthly tickets for the Golden Week of National Day. Please vote, please vote. It's the beginning of the month, please give me your monthly pass. Chapter 748. Who is Barnbacchus? Venus, the Illuminati base. In the orbit of Venus, a brand new starport is under construction. Designed by Tony, Hank, and Charles, it was built by 300 steel armors used in outer space and Magneto. Millions of tons of steel were continuously transported to the orbit of Venus through Magneto's ability. In order to prevent the sudden appearance of the starport from being observed by astronomy enthusiasts on Earth, Dr. Hank also disguised the entire space base. At the same time, the first starport Sky City on Earth finally started construction under the promotion of all parties. However, The scale of Sky City is much smaller than expected. Tony's original design was a real base that could accommodate 10,000 people to work and live. In the end, the size of Sky City was reduced to only 2,000 people. And there is no way to set up an ecological cycle inside this starport. In fact, the design of the ecological cycle originated from the Illuminati base on Venus. It was jointly developed by Dr. Hank and Professor Charles. It includes genetically modified fruit trees, rice and wheat, and automatic water filtration systems as well as oxygen and fertilizer decomposition systems. The whole system relies on the power supply of the arc energy, which can achieve a primary ecological cycle. As long as the arc energy still has electricity, the ecological cycle can be maintained. According to the original design of Sky City, it should be able to allow 10,000 people to work and live, and one energy replenishment will allow the starport to maintain for 10 years. If the arc reactor is manufactured on the starport itself, and the starport directly sends spacecraft to the moon to mine helium-3, the cost will be lower than on Earth. The simplest point is that the cost of the solid rocket required to transport a spacecraft to break through the atmosphere is incredibly high, and it is a one-time use. If you take off and land a spacecraft in the starport, you don't need to consider these things. There is no atmosphere for you to break through, and you don't need to accelerate to the third cosmic speed. Tony even came up with the idea of directly airdropping the collected ore from the starport in the future, as long as safety protection and final landing deceleration are done. This transportation cost will be greatly reduced. However, due to various considerations, various countries finally reduced the entire Sky City plan, including Tony's plan for the space elevator and the artificial planetary belt around the Earth. This huge plan is the plan after the starport Sky City. It was also brought up for discussion during the Illuminati's internal meeting. The specific approach is to use the space elevator as the skeleton, and one space elevator after another extends to the sky. Then use these skeletons to build a circle of circular buildings. The entire circular starport keeps rotating synchronously with the Earth. The Earth is the central axis, the space elevator is the spoke, and the circular starport is the outer circle. This structure is like a bicycle tire. This is a grand and domineering project, but in fact, Lee G and Rogers were not optimistic at the beginning. Tony's plan is too domineering and a bit taken for granted. Governments of various countries would never agree to build such a thing. The Asia-Europe super high-speed rail project alone has encountered many obstacles. If it were not for the later participation of China and Russia to ease the pressure of international public opinion, Lee Ji would have worried that relying on Latvia's unilateral strength would always cause greater conflicts. After China and Russia joined the super high-speed rail, it means that the traditional influence of these two countries has been included in the direction of railway extension. China is willing to take out an interest-free or low-interest loan of 5 trillion yuan to build this super railway. Of course, this loan is subject to certain conditions. Just like Latvia loaned money to Ukraine in exchange for the right to operate the railway for 30 years. China's requirements are not so harsh, but it also maintains the right to operate for 15 to 20 years as collateral. Russia is also making efforts, but because Russia itself is not a wealthy country, most of the domestic funds are controlled by a few oligarchs. So Russia's efforts are not great, but this also shows an attitude. Super high-speed railways are inevitable. Captain Rogers and the entrepreneurs around him were also persuading Congress to implement a high-speed railway plan in the United States. In fact, the railways in the United States are really bad. Some places are still railways from the 1960s. The demands and slogans of those entrepreneurs and financiers for laying super high-speed railways are simple: return of manufacturing. The United States has been shouting this slogan for nearly 10 years, but with little effect. The unemployment rate in traditional manufacturing cities remains high. Detroit, which was once glorious and known as the world's automobile city, has become a ghost town. The entire city center is so desolate that you can play a real version of Battle Royale. And Detroit is just a microcosm of the entire American manufacturing industry. Increase personnel mobility and evenly distribute job opportunities. This is the slogan promoted by the super high-speed railway in the United States. People in the Illuminati have mobilized all their forces to push in this direction. Humanities, social sciences and financial experts funded by the Horizon Foundation propose the concept of international cooperation in manufacturing 2.0. Company factories have geographical limitations. If the mobility of personnel increases to overcome geographical limitations, then the possibility of obtaining work plans will increase. In fact, Some companies have begun to try to do this. The Osborne Group and the Stark Group have signed an agreement with the Chinese government. It just so happens that the western part of China is desolate and barren because of the long-term chaos of the Manchus, and the Western Development Plan is imperative. Moreover, the strength and determination of the promotion are not comparable to the Earth, where Li Ji lived in his previous life. Stark and Osborne Group are willing to build a new heavy machinery processing plant in western China. Some of the personnel will recruit Chinese employees, and some will recruit engineers and senior technicians from Eastern European countries. In fact, the traditional heavy industry of the former Soviet Union is still very strong. After the disintegration of the Soviet Union, those high-level scientists may be poached by other countries. But generally excellent engineers and senior technicians will not. After the factory went bankrupt, many people lost their jobs or went to work in small factories. These people have technical skills, especially in Ukraine. Now the entire Ukrainian economy is in turmoil, and even traditional large companies are on the verge of bankruptcy. Engineers' salaries are also very low, and working in China can offer much higher salaries. The main reason why many people have not wanted to go abroad to make a living is that they do not want to live abroad in essence. The super high-speed railway will change all this. The two groups have signed an intention with the Chinese government to simplify the entry and exit procedures for these foreign employees. In this way, they can work in China for 5 days and take a 20-minute super high-speed rail to go home on weekends. In this way, there will be no loneliness of working abroad. This makes many people willing to try to go abroad to work. On the other hand, other businessmen including China and Russia have also seen huge opportunities. Because the average salary of Chinese workers has been rising year by year, China's manufacturing jobs are also shrinking. Some businessmen smelled the business opportunities, and a large number of job opportunities flowed to South Asian countries, but the average education level of these countries is not as good as that of China, and there is also a gap in technology. So after the super high-speed railway goes hand in hand, can we form a super large technology outsourcing team to solve the technical problems faced by these countries? These businessmen are also planning for all this. In an era of global change, no country can monopolize all the benefits. There are gains and losses, and it depends on how to weigh the gains and losses. Of course, the Illuminati is now pushing for the strangulation of Hydra's industry and has begun slowly. As long as the time comes, it will not be difficult to catch them all. And now, Li Ji is inviting the other two members of the Illuminati. He has something important to say. As for closing the door, Tony asked puzzledly after walking into the conference room and watching Li Ji close the door and put on the encryption lock. Rogers just shrugged. Maybe there is something important to announce? Are you getting married? Li Ji curled his lips. It would be great to get married. Speaking of which, Tony, you have to find a way to get the other ring back for me. I said, I can't do it. Tony said without shame, it's harder to take the ring off Pepper's hand than to climb to the sky. You'd better wait. What's wrong with your eyes? It looks like you have serious dark circles. Rogers noticed that Li Ji's eyes were a little dark. Li Ji waved his hand. It's just that I don't sleep well. My Alaskan and Samoyed dogs at home just bark every night. Tony raised his eyebrows. I haven't heard that you have a pet dog. That's not the point. We're not here to talk about this today. Li Ji took a deep breath and looked at Captain Rogers and said, Captain, I have a message I need to tell you. You can't be too excited after hearing this news. Rogers smiled. He sat on the chair and cooperated and held the armrest tightly. Go ahead, I just need to fasten my safety belt now. Li Ji looked into Captain Rogers' eyes and said, I found Barn Bacchus. He is not dead yet. Li Ji saw a calmness in Captain Rogers' eyes, and his blue eyes were as calm as a lake. Oh, something seems wrong? Li Ji was a little surprised. Could it be that the captain no longer cares about his good friend? Just when Li Ji was confused, Captain Rogers asked even more confusedly, who is Barn Bacchus? Do I know him? P.S. Please vote at the beginning of the month. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 749, Shockling Mistake. Who is Barn? Rogers asked Li Ji in great confusion. And there was an apologetic smile on his face, because from Li Ji's tone, Rogers should know this person, and he might even be very familiar with him. But Rogers couldn't remember anyone with this name among those he knew, and he thought he might have forgotten it. So Rogers' smile was more of an expression of his apology for forgetting someone. Luigi opened his mouth in disbelief, and it took him a long time to come back to his senses. Wait. Captain Rogers, I always thought you were a very sentimental and nostalgic person. Well, although it seems a bit self-boasting to say this, I am indeed a person who values sentiment and nostalgia. Captain Rogers said a little embarrassedly, I'm sorry for forgetting this Mr. Bacchus. So can you remind me who he is? Tony stood with his hands on his hips and watched the conversation between Luigi and Rogers, with a mentality of watching a show on his face. Luigi felt that he needed to reevaluate the importance of Bucky, in Rogers' heart. Maybe Bucky, is not important in Captain Rogers' heart. Look, I mentioned his name, but the captain didn't care at all. He didn't even remember that he had this friend. Maybe I was misled by the movie I watched in my previous life? Bucky, is not that important to Captain Rogers? If I had known that Bucky, was not that important to the captain, I wouldn't have gone through so much trouble. I would have directly created a bombing and solved him and the group of terrorists. Luigi felt that he made a wrong decision. He should have solved Bucky, directly. But now he is in a dilemma. Tony and Rogers are waiting for his explanation. By the way, let's make it clear who Bucky, is. Luigi sighed secretly. Okay, Captain. Bacchus. Your comrade in the Howling Commandos during World War II. Rogers thought again, but there is no one named Barn in my Howling Commandos. Luigi patted his forehead. Are you playing dumb, Captain Rogers? You mentioned Barn to me some time ago, when you were drunk. You mentioned that you were trapped in the Ardennes Forest during the Battle of the Bulge. In order to save the 101st Airborne Division and the 10th Armored Division, you had to break through the enemy's defenses and finally ask General Patton for help. You said that was the most tragic battle in your life. The Howling Commandos almost collapsed due to lack of supplies and food. If it weren't for Bucky, finding a hibernating brown bear, you might have frozen to death or starved to death in the freezing cold Ardennes Forest. Luigi said all these things in one breath, with a hint of impatience and a hint of teaching in his tone. Okay, Captain Rogers, I really misjudged you. I didn't expect you to be such an ungrateful person. Not long ago, you told us how good you and Bucky were, but it's only been a short time. You forgot about him in the blink of an eye. It's not so fast to get tired of the old and love the new. Luigi now strongly suspected that the incident in Captain America 3 that he watched in the cinema in his previous life, in which Rogers turned around and exchanged saliva with Peggy's niece Carter at Peggy's funeral, was true. Maybe Rogers did it in this world, but it was done very secretly and no one found out. After listening to all that Luigi said, Rogers was stunned for a long time, and then touched his earlobe. He said in an uncertain tone, Jason, the person you are talking about, his name should be Bucky Barnes, right? Huh? Luigi was stunned. What? Exclamation mark. Tony, who was watching the show on the side, was the first to react. PFFT hahaha. Tony laughed in a very unpresentable way. He squatted down and held his stomach and pointed at Luigi with one finger. The tone you used when you were scolding Captain Rogers just now was simply a model. I clearly got the name of this person wrong, but you still blame Steve for forgetting his old friend. This is simply unreasonable. Ho ha ho ha. It would be strange if Steve could remember someone who never existed in his team. Tony laughed quite exaggeratedly. And you made a mistake just now, but you still had the nerve to scold Steve? Ho ha ho ha. What? Did I make a mistake? Ah ha ha. Luigi felt an unprecedented embarrassment. His heartbeat and blood flow began to speed up, and he felt that he was getting hot from his neck to his earlobes. No need to guess, he must be blushing now. It's so damn embarrassing. Luigi wanted to find a crack in the ground to crawl into. No. Luigi suddenly thought of another thing. Why didn't Bucky, refute me for calling his name wrong at that time? Did I accidentally modify his subconscious? Made him subconsciously replace his real name with Bacchus? Exclamation mark. Luigi was confused for a moment when he thought of this, as if he had made a shocking mistake. It was not just that he said the wrong name to Rogers, but that was actually a small matter. The real big thing was that Bucky Barnes might never go back to his original name, and his name would be changed to Bacchus in his memory for decades. Oh my god. What if he meets Captain Rogers in the future? Could a scene like this happen? Rogers: Hi, Bucky. Bucky, my name is Barn. Rogers: Lee G felt that he had made a big mistake, and this time he was really embarrassed to death. Just when Lee G was so embarrassed that he wanted to jump back to Earth from Venus, Rogers suddenly realized something. He stood up excitedly and grabbed Lee G's arm tightly and asked, "What did you say just now?" Lee G answered subconsciously, "I'm sorry, Captain, I didn't mean to make a mistake with the name Bucky or Barn. You know the pronunciations are a bit similar, so it's normal to make a mistake. I didn't mean to change it. I didn't ask you that." Rogers interrupted Lee G's words of apology. "I mean, what did you just say?" Lee G woke up, looked at the excited Captain Rogers, pushed him back into his seat and said, "I said, Captain, don't be too excited. I just said, Bucky is not dead, I found him." Whoosh! Tony whistled beside him. Rogers took a few deep breaths, calmed his mood and acted less excited. Is he still alive? Is he okay? Where does he live now? Is he married? Maybe his grandchildren have already started a family. Take me to see him quickly, at least I want to see him more and chat with him while he is still alive. I. Rogers' voice was choked up. Tony walked behind him, patted his shoulder and comforted him. "Don't be so excited, Captain. It's a happy thing that your old comrade is alive. If you shed tears at this time, it will affect your image as a man in our hearts." Tony's comfort worked a little. Rogers clenched his fists and then relaxed them, repeating several times. The heavy breathing lasted for more than a minute before it became smooth. Lee G looked at Captain Rogers and said hesitantly, "Actually, he is a little different from what you think, Captain. In fact, I met him during a reconnaissance and crackdown on terrorist organizations. He was transformed into a killing machine. This transformation method aroused my interest. He is very similar to the transformation with your super soldier serum. So I captured him alive instead of killing him. It was not until I traced the source of his investigation that I discovered his true identity. Bucky did not retire as a glorious soldier and live a good life in anonymity. The crimes he has committed now are as many as the honors he received back then. Although it was ruthless, Lee G still had to say some things. He hurt a lot of people, even some members of our organization. And this is why I want to talk to you alone. I don't want our entire organization to fall apart because of certain things. It's not good for us. Promise me first, no matter what you hear later, please remain restrained. Otherwise, I can only force you to calm down." Lee G glanced at Tony Stark. Tony looked at Lee G and twitched his lips, barely smiling. Chapter 750 I'm going to kill him. Rogers frowned at what Lee G said about Bucky Barnes being transformed into a killing machine and working for terrorists. Especially when he heard that Bucky had hurt someone in the organization, Rogers' heart skipped a beat. It was normal for Lee G to inform him after finding Bucky Barnes. But why did he inform Tony? Rogers already had a bad guess. Maybe the person that Lee G said Bucky had hurt was Tony? Rogers glanced at Tony, and it was obvious that Tony also had a guess. The expression on his face solidified, and he was no longer in a state of mind of watching a show. Lee G looked at the two of them seriously and said, "Let me tell you some basic information first. I found Bucky when I was clearing out a mercenary organization in Eastern Europe. That mercenary organization planned many terrorist attacks in Eastern Europe and Asia, and I suspected that they were involved with Hydra and were a peripheral organization of Hydra. So Lan and I launched an annihilation operation against this organization. There I found Bucky. As I said before, I was a little interested in his transformation, so I tracked down some information about him. I found out that the transformed person was Bucky Barnes. They gave him a code name, Winter Soldier." Lee G explained the cause and effect. "He seems to have been frozen, but he is not as lucky as you, Captain. It was not the US military that found him, but the former Soviet Union. We all know that not long after the end of World War II, the US and the Soviet Union began to confront each other. The shadow of the Cold War shrouded almost the entire second half of the 20th century. Lee G was telling the truth, and Tony and Rogers nodded. The Cold War Iron Curtain gave rise to an arms race. From tanks to airplanes, to nuclear weapons, the two superpowers tried every possible means to deter each other. And because of your outstanding performance in World War II, Captain Rogers, you can even say that you have reversed the course of the entire war, and let everyone see the value of super soldiers." Lee G stretched out his finger and said, "As long as a team of super soldiers is used in the right place, Whether it is espionage, reconnaissance or assassination, they can easily complete tactical effects that a regiment of soldiers cannot do. After your experiment was successful, Captain Rogers, the United States has never given up copying your success. The Soviet Union is also very interested in the super soldier plan. Through my investigation, I found some information that the Winter Soldier is the plan. And Bucky is one of their original experimental prototypes. Lee Ji's words made Rogers clench his fists, and his cheeks twitched, as if he was suppressing his anger. Tony was also quietly listening to the information provided by Lee Ji. He did not know Bucky. But he knew that what Lee Ji said now was not so much for Captain Rogers to hear, but for himself. Nightcrawler was building up his mind, and Tony knew this very well. Captain Rogers, your super soldier serum transformation plan is unique. Tony once said that he learned this from the notes of Mr. Howard Stark. You were chosen by the Brotherhood of S.H.I.E.L.D. to save the world. Those factors that seem to be countless coincidences that contributed to the success of your experiment were actually carefully calculated. There will never be another Captain America in the world unless Newton appears again. When Lee Ji mentioned Newton, the corners of his mouth twitched, and he glanced at Tony quickly, but Tony didn't notice. Lee Ji continued, the injection of super soldier serum is not that simple. You are the only one who has succeeded in all these years. The US military also experimented with improving the original serum prototype, but it failed in the end. The soldiers who came out of the experiment all had various defects. Even if their bodies broke through the limits of the human body, there would be obstacles in personality cognition. Lee Ji's words were not alarmist. Because he learned about Colonel Stars and Stripes from Frank, and he was the test subject of the improved super soldier serum. All of their batches were abandoned. Although Colonel Stars and Stripes' physical strength broke through the human body's limit after the injection of the serum, it brought about an uncontrollable temper. Frank said that it took him and Nick more than 20 years to correct his personality. God knows how much effort they spent in these 20 years. From the military's point of view, this kind of super soldier is meaningless. Only you, Captain Rogers, still maintains a clear consciousness and complete personality. The personalities of others will develop in the direction of Red Skull Schmidt, and it is difficult to correct. And the US military does not have many good ways to improve this huge deviation. So now we all know. The Super Soldier project has been shelved indefinitely. Tony and Rogers nodded. It was true. The military had invested too much in it, but there was not enough return. They had enough. And the top management felt that it was enough to have Captain America, and they should not cause trouble for themselves, lawsuits. And in this regard, the Soviet Union has come up with a method, a unique method. Lee Ji curled his lips when he talked about the unique method, since such a super soldier serum will have various problems, and the main feature is the lack of personality. Then why not completely erase the personality of the experimental subject? Turning the experimental subject into a blank sheet of paper will not matter whether it is good or evil. They are transformed into tools without consciousness, just like robots. The commander enters the password and then starts the command. These Winter Soldiers will do those things. And Bucky has undergone such a transformation, and his personality has been completely washed away. And when he was transformed into a killing machine, he committed many heinous crimes. Bang! As soon as Lee Ji finished speaking, he heard Rogers punch the conference table hard. A corner of the prototype conference table made of oak was cracked. So Bucky is now just a beast who knows how to kill. He doesn't remember anything, right? Captain Rogers asked with gritted teeth. Lee Ji shook his head. No, the situation is not that bad. In fact, Bucky is stronger than you think. His transformation requires drugs to control him all the time. When I found him, he had not taken the medicine according to the normal procedure for some time. I think the drugs in the mercenary organization were running out. So they lengthened the intervals between medication. This loosened Bucky's personality memory. He is lucky that he was not turned into an idiot by those drugs. I don't know if this is universal or a special case, but it doesn't matter. Lee Ji glanced at Tony when he said this. Bucky's memory has been restored now. He remembers his past memories, including the crimes he committed when he was the Winter Soldier. He confessed to everything. Rogers groaned helplessly when he heard this. Now the most important thing is coming. I have said so much, I believe you two have already figured it out. Bucky did a lot of bad things, and he also hurt one of us. Lee Ji looked at Tony and said seriously, Tony, I think you have guessed it. Tony pulled the corners of his mouth and forced a smile. Did he steal one of my ex-girlfriends? It doesn't matter, I'm about to get married now. He tried his best to make himself look more humorous. But this is not the time for humor. Li Ji said to Tony very seriously, it's much more serious than this. As I said, the Soviet Union successfully conducted experiments on Bucky. They believe that it is feasible to create super soldiers after removing a person's personality. They want to mass-produce super soldier serum, but there is an important problem here. The super soldier serum obtained by the Soviet Union was circulated before Dr. Erkins died. All the things Li Ji said now were the news he got from Bucky after Bucky regained consciousness. The Soviet Union only got one bottle of serum, and they didn't even have extra serum for reverse research. Because they had already injected the last bottle of serum into Bucky. So they needed more information, whether it was serum samples or original data. And the American Super Soldier Project had not been hidden at that time. The host of this project was one of the organizers of your Super Soldier Project, Captain Rogers. His name is Howard Stark. Tony almost said this from his throat. Rogers' pupils dilated instantly. Even though his brain was transformed by the super soldier serum, which gave him a brain speed that ordinary people could not match. But at this moment, he still felt that his brain was a little stuck. And he felt that his adrenaline was increasing, and his hands began to tremble. In fact, Tony's performance was the same as Captain Rogers. Neither of them expected to hear the worst answer. But sometimes the truth of the matter has to be faced. Li Ji looked at the slightly trembling bodies of Tony and Rogers, and he still had to tell the story. It's not that he is cruel, but some things will always come to light one day, and it's better to be honest than to hide. Li Ji said in a very heavy tone, I think you have guessed the answer. The first mission of the Winter Soldier Bucky Barnes was to find the information of the super soldier serum. And the target was Howard Stark. Li Ji turned to look at Tony. Your father's death was not due to a car accident. It was a carefully designed trap. The designer was the Soviet military at the time, and the target was his super soldier serum information. And the executor was the Winter Soldier Bucky Barnes. Captain Rogers still heard the news, and now he only felt bitter. Tony's eyes were almost popping out of their sockets. He stepped forward and grabbed Li Ji's collar. Bring him here, I want to kill him. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.